so we'll go ahead and get started. If I could just have Ms. Taylor, if Ms. Taylor's on the line.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. If you would please call the roll.
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez.
Present.
Vice Chair Schaefer. Member Gaines.
Present.
Member Cohen.
Present.
Controller Yee.
Here.
Members, we do have a quorum, so the meeting is officially started. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If I can get you all to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, just a friendly reminder to everyone, especially those guests that will be joining us a little bit later and those that are on now, that both the members and our invited speakers are all simultaneously on a shared open teleconference line. And patience is needed to keep the audio clean and clear. Please ask for your turn to speak after each presentation has concluded, so the transcriptions can clearly hear and properly record the meeting. Thank you. With that, let me turn to the members. Do we have any comments before we take up the first order of business? And I see a hand there from Member Cohen.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. Good morning to you. I just wanted to recognize that November is Veterans Month, and certainly as members of the Board of Equalization, we do a lot of work to help veterans with various exemptions and answer tax questions, property tax questions that they may have. And so I just wanted to take a moment to recognize the veterans that may be listening, or veterans that might be on staff, or even veterans in our own family. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I know there was several events going on this last week. I had the opportunity to attend a few, but that's a great opener. Any other opening comments or questions before we begin? Hearing and seeing none, let me ask Ms. Taylor, she would please announce our first order of business.
Our first order of business is an announcement regarding public teleconference participation. Good morning, and thank you for joining today's Board of Equalization meeting via teleconference. Throughout the duration of today's meeting, you will primarily be in a listen-only mode. As you may know from our public agenda notice and our website, we have requested that individuals who wish to make a public comment fill out the public comment submission form found on our additional information webpage in advance of today's meeting, or alternatively, participate in today's meeting by providing your public comment live. After the presentation of an item has concluded, we will begin by identifying any public comment requests that have been received by our board proceedings staff, with the AT&T operator providing directions for you to identify yourself. After all known public commenters have been called, the operator will also provide public comment instructions to the individuals participating via teleconference. Accordingly, if you intend to make a public comment today, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line, as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay. When giving a public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We ask that everyone who is not intending to make a public comment please mute their line or minimize background noise. If there are technical difficulties when we are in the public comment portion of our meeting, we will do our best to read submitted comments into the record at appropriate times. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. If you would please call our first agenda item.
Our first item is B, Property Tax Appeals Hearing. Contribution disclosure forms are required pursuant to Government Code Section 15626. Board Proceedings has received contribution disclosure forms for this morning's hearings from the parties, agents, and participants. No disqualifying contributions were disclosed. All parties, agents, and participants are on the memorandum provided to your office. This is a constitutional function. Before today's hearing is formally announced, there is a preliminary ex parte communication disclosure that needs to occur on the record. Please note that an ex parte communication has occurred on Lodi Gas Storage, LLC, and Wild Goose Storage, LLC, which included both oral and written communications with a third party. The BOE member has provided a memorandum outlining the communication to the board proceedings staff, and the memorandum has been made part of the record. In addition, board proceedings has provided notice to the parties and provided the parties with an opportunity to be heard. At this time, none of the parties has requested an opportunity to address the ex parte communication. As a result of this ex parte communication, Member Gaines has indicated that he will recuse himself from the consideration of Lodi Gas Storage, LLC and Wild Goose Storage, LLC to avoid the appearance of bias. Member Gaines will mute and turn off his camera during the discussion of these matters. It is noted for the record that the board still has a quorum to hear both cases. The first matter is B1, Property Tax Appeals Hearing, Petition for Reassessment of Unitary Value. Lodi Gas Storage, LLC, 0198 SAU 21-034. On November 10th, 2021, the petitioner waived their appearance on this matter. Member Gaines, would you please turn off your camera and mute? This matter will be presented by Ms. Banzon.
Thank you. And just for the record, I know Vice Chair has joined us. Welcome, Vice Chair. And we do have a quorum without Member Gaines, so continue.
Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board, good morning. My name is Jeanette Banzon, the appeals attorney for the State Board of Equalization assigned to this case. As the appeals attorney, I serve as a neutral fact finder in this case, and I have submitted a summary decision for your consideration of the Lodi Gas Storage LLC petition. This case was originally scheduled for oral hearing, but the petitioner waived their appearance in this matter late last week after voicing support for the State Assessed Property Division's second revised recommendation. Accordingly, petitioner has waived their appearance and has requested the board decide this petition on the basis of the written record. Here, petitioner is a natural gas storage facility who has raised three issues in their petition. 1, whether the economic obsolescence adjustment was appropriately calculated. 2, whether the income approach, the capitalized earnings ability value indicator, was appropriately calculated. And 3, whether the relative reliance placed on the cost and income approaches to value were appropriately calculated. Based on these three issues, petitioner's revised requested opinion of value was $33,200,000. At the appeals conference on October 13, 2021, the parties identified the need for supplemental data exchanges to further evaluate the merits of petitioner's contentions. Specifically, certain petitioner data was needed that had not been previously provided in the annual property statement filed with the board or other prior data exchanges. After significant review of the newly provided data, respondent found that certain supplemental data was reliable and that it supported a revised recommendation. The revised recommendation was relayed to the petitioner on the morning of Thursday, November 15, 2021. Later that same day, petitioner indicated they were in support of respondent's revised recommended value of $52,400,000, thereby waiving their appearance for today. This value recommendation reflects a partial grant of the petition as to each of the three issues and a total reduction of $18,300,000 from the petitioner's 2021 board-adopted value earlier this year. While the petitioner has engaged with the petition process by providing supplemental data, pursuant to these various requests. Respondent and the appeals attorney have also relayed the need for the petitioner assessee to include certain data within the petitioner's future property statements. Inclusion of such data in their property statement filings will ensure SAPD is given the opportunity to review such data during the appraisal season. Each lien date requires SAPD to do a review of various data sources, including key assessee-provided data, to render unitary value recommendations to the board. As the appeals attorney, I have reviewed the written record and supplemental data exchanges that have occurred in this case and provided my analysis of the record for the board's consideration. Based on the written record and reflected in greater detail within my summary decision, I am recommending that the board grant this petition in part by adopting the recommended value of $52,400,000. Both the State Assessed Properties Division and the petitioner have expressed support for this recommendation. I ask for the board's adoption of my recommendation. This concludes my presentation for Lodi Gas Storage LLC. I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a quick procedural question if nobody else has a comment or question. And that is, I understand that the petitioner's economic obsolescence calculation was about 79.70%, while the department's economic obsolescence calculation was about 73.82%. Using the petitioner's proposed methodology using EBITDA, what accounted for this difference if the EBITDA methodology was deemed reliable, and why wasn't the petitioner's 79.70% calculation acceptable?
Thank you for your question, Chairman Vasquez. So when supplemental data is submitted to support a request for an increased economic obsolescence adjustment during the petition process, the data submitted must be verifiable and must be reviewed for reasonableness and appropriateness prior to accepting any petitioner's request for further adjustment. This is consistent with the board's published guidelines on substantiating additional obsolescence. So here, as part of the supplemental data submission, petitioner has provided additional data on claimed revenue and expenses, which the SAPD reviewed and verified. However, the revenue and expense amounts claimed by the petitioner were then adjusted by SAPD for consistency with the relevant property tax rules and appraisal principles. This verification, review, and adjustment process accounts for the difference you have highlighted. So in general, verification and review of petitioner provided data is essential in both appraisal and petition process. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any procedural questions or comments for Ms. Branson? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, do we have any public comments on this?
We do not have any written public comments.
Can we check with AT&T?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, please let us know if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding this matter. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding this matter? I believe we have a technical difficulty.
Are they hearing us or not yet?
They can hear us, but we cannot hear him back.
Oh, okay. Are we able to communicate with him through other means?
We're working on that right now.
All right.
All right, we are being informed by CDTFA that the AT&T moderator needs to press *6 to unmute himself.
And this is Ryan with AT&T. Check 1, 2. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. We did check for questions while that was going on, and we do not have anyone in queue at this time for public comment.
Thank you. With that, members, if there's no other comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the staff's recommendation for settling this appeal.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by our controller. I will go ahead and second that. And Ms. Taylor, if you can please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
Ms. Cohen, we have you as an aye, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So that's unanimous of those present, with Member Gaines abstaining and not participating. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you please call the next item.
Our next item is E3, Tax Program Non-Appearance Matters Adjudicatory, Legal Appeals, Property Tax Matters, Petitions for Reassessment of Unitary Value. A, Wild Goose Storage, LLC, 0195 SAU 21-036. B, Central Valley Gas Storage, LLC, 0104 SAU 21-030. C, Gill Ranch Storage, LLC, 0121 SAU 21-035. Contribution disclosure forms are required pursuant to Government Code Section 15626. Contribution disclosure forms were not received for any matter stated prior to the beginning of the board meeting. No disqualifying contributions were disclosed. All parties, agents, and participants are on the memorandum provided to your office. Forms were missing from the following entities: Wild Goose Storage, LLC, Central Valley Gas Storage, LLC, Gill Ranch Storage, LLC. All parties have waived their appearances and have not waived confidentiality to the record. This is a constitutional function. The first case is Wild Goose Storage, LLC, 0195 SAU 21-036. This matter will be presented by Ms. Banzan.
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board. Good morning. Jeanette Banzan here, appeals attorney for the State Board of Equalization assigned to this case. I have submitted a summary decision for Wild Goose Storage LLC petitioner for your consideration. In this case, petitioner has waived their appearance and is requesting the board to decide this petition based on the written record. Here, petitioner is a natural gas storage facility who has raised 3 issues in their petition. First, whether the economic obsolescence adjustment was appropriately calculated. Second, whether the income approach value indicator was appropriately calculated. And third, whether the relative reliance placed on the cost and income approaches to value were appropriate. Based on the written record and reflected in greater detail within my summary decision, I am recommending that the board grant this petition in part by adopting the revised recommended value of $113,500,000. Both the State Assessed Properties Division and the petitioner have expressed support for this recommendation. I ask for the board's adoption of my recommendation. This concludes my presentation for Wild Goose Storage LLC. Thank you.
Ms. Benson, on a procedural matter, are we going to handle each one separately? Because I noticed there was 3 here.
Yes, yes, Chairman Vasquez, we will be handling each one separately.
Okay, because I know Member Gaines is not participating just on the Wild Goose, but will be participating in the other 2. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other procedural questions of Ms. Benson from any of the members? Seeing and hearing none. Do we have any written comments on this, Ms. Taylor?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check to see if AT&T, if there's anybody on the line who wishes to speak on this matter?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
Certainly, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. Once again, it's 1, 0. And allowing a few moments, we do not have anyone in queue.
Thank you. With that, hearing and seeing no other comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the staff's recommendation with including the stats.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
It's been moved by our controller.
I would second that, Vice Chair Schaefer.
Vice Chair Schaefer is seconding that. Ms. Taylor, will you please call the roll on that motion?
Certainly. The motion is to adopt staff's recommendation. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of those present and are able to vote. With that, Ms. Manson, are you going to continue, or is it?
Chairman Vasquez,
Taylor.
this is Ms. Taylor. I'll call the next case.
Thank you.
Member Gaines, please rejoin the meeting.
Thank you.
The second case is Central Valley Gas Storage LLC 0104 SAU 21-030. This matter will be presented by Ms. Garrett.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board. My name is Sarah Garrett, the appeals attorney for the State Board of Equalization assigned to this case. I have submitted a summary decision for Central Valley Gas Storage LLC for your consideration. In this case, Central Valley Gas Storage LLC, the petitioner, has waived their appearance and is requesting the board decide this petition based on the written record. Petitioner has raised 2 primary issues within their petition. First, whether the economic obsolescence adjustment was appropriately calculated, and second, whether the appropriate reliance was placed on the cost and income value indicators. Based on the written record and reflected in greater detail within my summary decision, I recommend that the board grant this petition in part by adopting the revised recommended value of $26,900,000. Additionally, I would note that both the State Assessed Properties Division and petitioner have expressed support for this recommendation to resolve this petition. I ask for the board's adoption of my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Members, do we have any comments or questions, procedural questions for Ms. Garrett? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if anybody's on the line who wishes to speak on this?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there's anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we do not have anyone in queue at this time.
Thank you. With that, members, seeing no other comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion from any of the members supporting the staff's recommendation.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by our controller. I will go ahead and second that. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll.
The motion on the floor is to adopt staff recommendation. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Ms. Taylor, if you please call the next case.
The next case is Gill Ranch Storage LLC 0121 SAU 21-035. This matter will be presented by Ms. Banzan.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board, good morning. My name is Jeanette Banzan, the appeals attorney for the State Board of Equalization assigned to this case. I have submitted a summary decision for Gill Ranch Storage LLC petitioner for your consideration. In this case, petitioner has waived their appearance and is requesting the board to decide this petition based on the written record. Here, petitioner is a natural gas storage facility who has raised two primary issues in their petition. First, whether the income approach value indicator was appropriately calculated, and second, whether appropriate reliance was placed on the cost and income value indicators. Based on the written record and reflected in greater detail within my summary decision, I recommend that the board grant this petition in part by adopting the revised recommended value of $18,800,000, and both the State Assessed Properties Division and the petitioner have expressed support for this recommendation. I ask for the board's adoption of my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manson. Members, do we have any comments or questions, procedural questions for Ms. Manson? Oh, I see Vice Chair's hand. Go ahead. But you're muted, I believe.
Catch that. I just, Vice Chair Schaefer, I just like to ask, what was the assessment and what is it now? And what is the change?
Thank you for that question, Vice Chair Schaefer. The assessment for Gill Ranch Storage initially is the board adopted unitary value was $22,300,000, and the current the revised appeal recommendation is $18,800,000.
That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing no other hands, Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if anybody's on the line?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, as a reminder, if you'd like to make public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we have no comments in queue.
Thank you. With that, members, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff's recommendation with the adjustment presented to us by Ms. Benson.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved. I will go ahead and second that. Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the roll.
The motion on the floor is to adopt staff recommendation. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous, all those present. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
Our next item is D2, Tax Program Non-Appearance Matters, Consent, Property Tax Matters. Petitions for reassessment of unitary value. A, Trans Bay Cable LLC 0119. B, Pacific Gas and Electric Company 0135. C, Crown Castle Fiber LLC 8169. Petition for reassessment and penalty abatement on unitary value. D, OPEX Communications 8076. Contribution disclosure forms are not required pursuant to Government Code 15626. This is a constitutional function. This matter will be presented by Mr. McCool.
Good morning, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I am Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. Before you today for your consideration and adoption are 3 petitions for reassessment of unitary value and 1 petition for reassessment and penalty abatement of unitary value. For all of these matters, staff and petitioners are in agreement on the recommendations. I ask for your adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any procedural questions or comments for Mr. McCool? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on these items?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if anybody's on the line?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
And if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1 then 0 at this time. 1 0. And we have no questions in queue or comments in queue at this time.
Thank you. If there are no further comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the staff's recommendation for settling these appeals.
I would so move.
Moved by our Vice Chair Schaefer. It's been seconded by our Controller. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll.
Yes, the motion on the floor is to adopt staff recommendation. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is J1, Administrative Consent Agenda, Approval of the Board Meeting Minutes. The minutes of October 19 through 20, 2021 were attached to the public agenda notice for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Members, the proposed minutes from the October board meeting do not include the work group discussion on the wine industry and the wine growers' excise tax data. There was a question regarding including the work group minutes in the regular October board meeting minutes, but since the board has not yet finalized an operational plan for the work groups, I recommend work groups' actions should be in the regular meeting minutes. We have a duty to provide a record of all of our public meetings, so I encourage the board to authorize board proceedings to amend the regular meeting minutes to include the work group discussion, and that we wait until December to approve the corrected minutes. We can further discuss the operational plan later today, when we take up the work group charter discussion, Member Cohen and Member Schaefer, do we have some direction or a motion that you would like to offer on this? Member Cohen, go ahead.
I was actually calling calling your attention to recognize Miss Yvette Stowers. Her hand was up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Stowers, go ahead.
Thank you, Member Cohen. I thought we had closed the board meeting prior to starting the work group meeting. So if we did, can we legally include those minutes if the meeting had already been adjourned?
It's my understanding. Well, here I'm seeing our attorney pop up on the screen here, Mr. Nanjo.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Vasquez. Thank you, Deputy Controller Stowers. As I reviewed the last meeting video, we did adjourn the meeting, so it would not be appropriate for the wine group meeting or minutes to be part of the board meeting minutes because there was an adjournment. So they will have to be separate. Now, that being said, they could be appended to the back of him. There are a number of different ways that the board may choose to handle them, but they should not be part of the meeting minutes per se. Member Cohen, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if that was a question.
Member Cohen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nanjo. I was just flagging because it's almost easier to wave your hand than to find the raise your hand key function. So I actually perhaps have a proposal that will be a temporary remedy. I'd like to make a motion that we move that this item be continued until we reconvene on Thursday, November 18th, 2021, so that the board meeting minutes can be revised to include language prepared by board proceedings that reflects the actions taken by the board work group on the wine industry and wine growers excess tax data that took place on October 20th of 2021. So again, just to restate, I'm just making a motion that we continue until Thursday so that the board meeting minutes can be revised to include the language prepared by board proceedings.
I would second that.
Thank you.
I believe that's okay. I'm not seeing any hands or comments from our legal department.
Well, since the motion has already been made and seconded, I do want to pivot to the chief counsel to address this discrepancy. Maybe, I don't know, we'll look to you, Executive Director Fleming, first, and then we can hear from your counsel.
Thank you, members. Just getting a couple of screens set up here. Thank you, Chief Counsel. I'm going to ask for some flexibility here. So, since we had a situation where we are introducing since we're introducing and have not yet fully adopted the board work group structure, I think part of the discussion is whether or not all aspects of that work group structure are in place or not. So in this case specifically, even though we adjourned the regular meeting and then moved to the work group meeting, as we can have some flexibility, and I'm just asking for the parliamentary team behind me to just make sure that I'm on point with this. We can ask that the amendments to the minutes be revised, and then we can reconsider those at the Thursday meeting. You also have the option of taking this under consideration at the December meeting. If the collective board wants to proceed with making some revisions and then just deferring them to on Thursday, that's an option. It's an option that we can pursue. The key for us is to make sure that it's accurate and then it's transparent. So the regular board meeting minutes have already been posted to the board, so that information is there. It's just an issue of if the board wants to proceed with taking these revisions under consideration and moving it to Thursday, you can do that, or you can table them to December. And just making sure that the language is clear as to exactly what we're doing to support the transparency. So that way, if any taxpayer or somebody goes back and looks at it, they can understand what happened at the October meeting, what the minutes that are currently posted as the J1 item on the PAN, look at those minutes. If you have the public discussion, that can be incorporated as a part of our go forward plan. So I just ask my parliamentary team just to confirm, give me a thumbs up or an adjustment if I need to revise that statement, please.
So Executive Director Fleming and Member Cohen, that is generally correct. We can do something like that. I think from a legal and parliamentary procedure standpoint, we just need to be able to show that the regular board meeting was adjourned, but we can either have the minutes continue either in text or through an appendix. There are various ways that we can show that, but the operative point is the details of the discussion of the work group and the board's actions can be shown in a document, whether it's appended, whether it continues or what have you, as long as it's clear for historical purposes that the adjournment occurred and then we went into the work group.
I concur. So the clarity is just make sure that there is a clear and accurate record of the actions that were taken at the October meeting, so that is, in essence, documented and recorded, the actions that are occurring today, and then the actions that are, so as long as that historic record is correct and accurate, it's the board's pleasure if they want to take this up now or table it till December.
Quick question just for clarification. So, so I've reviewed the minutes as well, the minutes of the board meeting that was held on October 19th and 20, and I'm not comfortable necessarily voting on it. I think there's a little bit of discrepancy in the interpretation of what transpired. I have suggested language that I'd like to be considered to be, well, let me back up first. First of all, there's an open motion just to continue to Thursday. And so in discussion with that open motion, I'd like for you to consider this language for Thursday. I'll read it. The Wine Industry and Wine Growers Excess Tax Data Board Work Group met at 4:23 p.m. via teleconference with Mr. Vasquez, Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Gaines, and Ms. Cohen present. Ms. Stowers present on behalf of Ms. Yee in accordance with the Government Code Section 7.9. The Board Work Group on Wine Industry and Wine Growers Excess Data. Mr. Schaefer and Ms. Cohen made introductory remarks regarding discussion of issues, options, and possible actions to address concerns raised by the Wine Institute regarding access to wine growers' excess tax data. There was a speaker, Mr. Tim Smeltzer, who was the Vice President of California State Relations Wine Institute. The recommendation of the work group upon a motion that I made, seconded by Mr. Schaefer and unanimously carried, Mr. Vasquez, Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Gaines, myself, and Ms. Stowers voting yes, and the work group directed the executive director to report back to the board at its November meeting on a possible administrative solution that allows disclosure of volumes of sales data and other relevant information filed by individual wineries extracted via the winery's zip code, which would continue to preserve the individual's confidentiality of the taxpayer. You may recall that Mr. Tim Smeltzer, who is the Vice President of the California State Relations Wine Institute, there's a recommendation of the work group saying that upon the motion that I provided, seconded by Mr. Schaefer, and then also carried out by the board, all of us voting yes, noting that Ms. Stower voted no, that the work group agreed to support in concept a legislative solution that allows the dissemination of data and information sought by the wine industry. And then the work group adjourned at 4:52 p.m. and the foregoing minutes are adopted by the board on November 16th or 18th of 2021. So that is the language that I wanted to make sure that we read into the record. It is my hope that we will be able to reconcile this discrepancy on the minutes. And so that is why I'm asking for us, or for you, to consider just tabling this discussion until the next time we meet, which is going to be on Thursday. And Mr. Chair, again, the motion has already been made. I think that it's a fair thing to ask if we just have an opportunity to work on this a little bit more Thursday.
Thank you. With that, I see a hand from Member Gaines. Is that on the motion, Member Gaines?
Yes, it is. If I could just ask a question of Member Cohen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you, okay, so thank you for reciting the amendments that you want to make, but can you just clarify for me exactly what we're changing from the original minutes? What is it that there was an issue with that we need to resolve?
So it appears that the staff have been navigating between the adoption of our charter for work group and then current circumstances. And so at this time, we haven't adopted the charter. And with that in mind, I'd like, board proceedings to read the proposed amendments into the record this morning. So that I think that would bring clarity to you, Mr. Gaines. Board proceedings, are you able to do that? To read into record the proposed amendments?
Ms. Cohen, this is Ms. Taylor speaking.
Hello.
I believe that if you are reading from the sample minutes that we provided on early November, I believe I can read them back. I have them up. They may not be exactly because it's hard to catch it that quickly, but I believe we're on the same page.
Okay, so Mr. Gaines, what I read are the amendments that I am proposing. I'm not sure if I'm understand fully your question. If you feel like I didn't answer it, it's because I didn't fully understand it. Maybe you could restate it.
I'm trying to clarify what was wrong with the original minutes. I know that we have to have separation because we did have adjournment, and Member Stowers brought that up and clarified that.
The original minutes don't include the written amendment. That's all. And so what I'd like to do is just go ahead and call for the vote just so we can take up this discussion on Thursday. And then also that would give you an opportunity to read the amendments that I'm proposing that we vote on, that we discussed in last month's meeting. Does that make sense? Is that
I'm comfortable with what you read to us.
Okay. Thank you. But I was just thinking in the essence of time, if we were just to continue to Thursday, we could pick up the item on Thursday.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the motion is basically just to really just kind of table this until Thursday, giving staff the opportunity to go back to the minutes and bring them back to us with the revision and see if we all agree on those revisions on Thursday.
Yes, sir. That is exactly right.
Okay. I see no problem with that unless I see any other hands or comments from members or staff. Seeing no hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you would just call the roll on the motion.
Okay, the motion on the table is to move this item to be continued until you meet on Thursday, December 18th, to allow the minutes to be revised as provided by Ms. Cohen and discussed on Thursday. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer. Vice Chair Schaefer. Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Question before I vote yes. Do we have to take public comments before we finalize this vote?
Yes, we do.
Yes, you do.
Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on the minutes?
We do not have any written comments on the minutes.
Can we just check with AT&T real quick before we finish our vote?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, if you'd like to make public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we have no one in queue for public comment.
With that, just on a procedural matter, I guess we should go back and just retake the vote then, just to be safe. Ms. Taylor, if you would just call the roll on the motion now.
All right, I'm calling for a second time. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer. Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
And it's my understanding the vice chair may not be voting because I think he might have dropped off on the call here. So we'll see when he reconnects.
Yeah, we could leave the vote open until he reconnects.
Yes,
Why don't we do that?
My recommendation is to leave the vote open and allow him to rejoin, and then we can come back to that item.
All righty. Why don't we do that? And while we're waiting, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is K1A, Executive Director's Report, Operational Priorities. Report on the status of pending and upcoming operational priorities. This matter will be presented by Ms. Fleming.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I'm Brenda Fleming, the Executive Director. Today's report will provide updates on our priorities and significant accomplishments since last month's meeting. Members, we held the Advisory Council Kickoff meeting on November 2nd. As you know, the purpose of the Advisory Council is to provide a forum for the Executive Director to receive input with a diversity of perspectives on matters relating to the exploration and development of approaches and best practices to address the many complex tax issues which confront California citizens, businesses, and policymakers. As I've shared previously, the council members consist of the same industry groups that were represented in our prior advisory councils. As this was the kickoff meeting, members, for reestablishing the forum, at this meeting, we really provided the members of the council with an overview of the Board of Equalization then and now, and discussing the changes that occurred since 2017. Additionally, the council members focused on general business items. Fundamentally was an adoption of the charter and the bylaws, and some discussion about meeting schedules going forward. So the general discussion was the bylaws and charter were fully adopted and we'll have 2 meetings per year, typically the first half of the year, tentatively February timeframe, and probably later, second one in the year would be in the October timeframe. So we're looking forward to those ongoing meetings. My plan, members, there is as significant information is coming out of those meetings. I'll summarize that information to make sure that you're fully informed, especially for the rich content that we gather from it. That gives some more material for us to work with as we continue to make improvements to our environment on modernization activities going forward. So really looking forward to it. I'm very thankful and very grateful to all of the council members for their participation and the time that they shared with us. It's just a rich body of industries that we've been working with and are important to our success. So thank you if the council members are listening. Thank you to all of them also. Next, members, as a reminder, this is related to our board meetings and resuming them in person. Through January of 2022, January 31st of 2022, per Assembly Bill 361, we'll continue our board meetings to be remote. Our tentative plan, however, is to begin in-person meetings at the 450 N Street location beginning in February, all things continuing to move forward successfully with COVID and our ability to have those meetings proceed. BOE staff members have been working with our partners at CDTFA to make sure that the 450 N Street boardroom is prepared to resume those public meetings in person, including some improvements with some newer technology. We are hoping and planning that we can continue to utilize the video conference technology and the AT&T technology as we've been doing in this environment, which would allow the public participation remotely, even though the board members and staff would be in the boardroom. As we approach that timeframe, members, I will continue to provide you with updates on how it goes. If any of you are going to be in the Sacramento area in between now and that February timeframe, we'll be happy to have you join me to take a walkthrough of the boardroom so you can see what's going on there. So look forward to it. So of course, we were going to take all precautions to keep everyone, staff, board members, staff, and the public, of course, safe and healthy as we still continue just on the edge of sliding out of COVID, but we still have a few issues. So we just want to continue to err on the side of safety. But we do look forward to having in-person meetings again and joining you in that forum. If there's no questions, members, what I'd like to do is pass it over to staff and have them begin to give you updates on some of the other operational items. And then we look forward to continuing with the successful board meeting today. So thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions for Ms. Fleming? Seeing none. I see thumbs up. Okay, I guess we're good. Ms. Taylor, do we have any public or written comments on this?
We do not have any public comments.
Can we check with AT&T real quick?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we have no comments in queue.
Thank you. With that, members, let's go back to our minutes or that motion. Now that I see Vice Chair Schaefer back on the line, just so we can finish the vote and close out that motion. Ms. Taylor, if you would put us back on the motion by Member Cohen and second by Vice Chair Schaefer.
Certainly. We are revisiting our motion on J1, and the vote remains open in order to allow Mr. Vice Chair Schaefer to vote. The motion on the floor was to move that this item be continued until you meet on Thursday, December 18th, to allow the minutes to be revised as provided by Ms. Cohen. Vice Chair Schaefer, how would you vote?
I would vote aye.
Thank you.
All right, so that's unanimous, members, and we'll close that out. And now let me go back to Ms. Taylor for our next item.
Certainly. The next item is K1B, Executive Director's Report, Operational Priorities and Projects, Operational Priorities, Report on the Status of Operational Priorities. This matter will be presented by Ms. Renati.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today I'll report on some of the agency's operational priorities and projects. The first item is in regard to our workforce capacity. For the last 2 years, the BOE management team has spent considerable effort to ensure our vacant positions are filled. Since our last meeting, we have filled 6 positions, including 2 important program supervisory roles and 4 staff new to the BOE. 85% of the agency's remaining vacancies are in active recruitment. The next item is an update on our process improvement project. Currently, managers are performing process reviews on key operational processes to identify areas and opportunities for improvement. This work aligns with our strategic goals to modernize our property tax system. The project is going well and staff are identifying priority projects. And the last item is a report on the status of our Proposition 19 implementation project. I am happy to report there are no issues or concerns to report. A highlight for this month is that Regulation 462.520 was approved by the Office of Administrative Law, also known as OAL, and will be effective January 1st, 2022. The remaining rule change, Regulation 462.540 regarding base year transfers, was withdrawn from OAL for small technical changes. We will quickly make the changes, bring the item back to the board next month for your approval, and then we will resubmit to OAL. We are optimistic this process will be quickly completed so that the regulation will also have an effective date of January 1st, 2022. Members, this concludes this portion of my presentation. I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Members, do we have, I see a hand from Member Gaines.
Yes, I want to thank Ms. Renati for that report, and I'm very encouraged on the filling of positions, that 6 new positions filled, 4 from the outside and 2 in-house. I'm just curious about on the new hires. Can you give us examples of where some of these folks are coming from?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the question, but I'm sorry I don't have that answer. From the best of my recollection, they're not coming from other state agencies. They're coming from an assessor's office and other experienced personnel.
Yes, okay, that's great. And in terms of our vacancy rate, that's come down dramatically. And am I correct in saying that our vacancy rate is at or below the state average for state agencies?
I would say we are a little above, but we're very close.
Okay.
So I'm not ready to say that we're at the rate because we have a little ways to go, but we're very close.
Yeah, I know you're working on a number of additional positions and going through interviewing. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Below the state average for state
Seeing none
agencies?
and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, do we
I
have
would say
any
we
written
are
comments?
a little above, but we're very close.
We do not have any
Okay.
written comments.
I'm not ready to say that we're at the rate.
Can we
'cause,
check with
we have
AT&T if
a
anybody's
little
on the
ways to
line?
go, but we're very close.
AT&T
Yeah, I know
moderator,
you're working on a
can
number
you let us know
of
if there's anyone who would like to make a
positions
public
and going through
comment on
interviewing.
this
So
matter?
thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0. 1, 0. And we have no comments in queue.
Thank you. Before I move on, Member Gaines, I think that's an old hand, right?
I'm an old hand. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't move on and I forgot you there. Okay. Now I see a new hand though.
Yeah.
Member Cohen. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm a new hand.
You're a new hand. You're
I
welcome.
just actually wanted to just clarify something. There was a misspoken error when the clerk was reading the last vote that we did with Mr. Schaefer. The vice chair voted on the wrong date. The clerk read December 18th. This is for the motion to bring back the board minutes on Thursday. It's supposed to be Thursday, November 18th, but the motion that was read and then voted on said December 18th. So I'm going to look to board proceedings just for clarification. I don't know if we need to go back and redo the vote. If so, I'll make a motion to amend that vote and then just be mindful that the date that we're looking to bring these minutes back to our meeting is for November 18th. And then colleagues also, if you'd like the executive director we could either read the amendments to you on the record. I reiterated them, but the executive director could read them, or we can also circulate them to you in writing, because I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page when this matter comes up on Thursday. So I guess I will point to board proceedings just for clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Yes, thank you, Ms. Cohen. This is Ms. Taylor. I think you are correct. My staff was sending me messages saying that they thought I said December 18th.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. We all thought November 18th in our minds.
True. So I'll make a motion to rescind that vote. We can quickly restate the motion and make the vote, Ms. Taylor, or are you able just to make the correction without doing a vote?
I think you could make a motion to just correct the date from December 18th to November 18th. That'd be the cleanest.
All right, let's go with the cleanest route then. I'll make a motion to acknowledge that we will be sending the meeting minutes. We will be addressing the meeting minutes on November 18th, 2021. Not December 18th.
I would second that.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Okay. Ms. Taylor, do we need to ask for public? I see a hand from Ms. Stowers.
Yes, just clarification. I'm good with the motion. So you gave us a couple of options, Ms. Cohen, to either circulate the amendments or read it into the record again. I would like to express my desire for them to be circulated so I can touch and feel them. And then my other part of that is, are we going to, although the board has not voted on the minutes yet, are we going to attach them to our pan so that the public can see them?
Yes.
Like we have. Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
we will, without a doubt.
Yes.
We always do that in transparency. Okay, so again, a motion has been made. It's been seconded by Mr. Schaefer. I think we're ready for the vote, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I just wanted to check, now that we're doing this whole procedural thing, do we need to ask for public comment on it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, let's do that just to be safe.
All right, AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
And ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we have no comments in queue.
Okay, now I think we're ready for a vote. Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the roll on the motion.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of those present. And with that, Ms. Taylor, if you would call our next item.
Certainly. The next item is K3A, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, Operational Updates, Community Land Trust Property Guidance. Presentation of issue paper 21-003 on a proposed letter to assessors, LTA, for assessment and exemption of community land trust housing for board consideration. This matter will be presented by Mr. Young.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. My name is David Young, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. Today, I bring before you the guidance on the assessment of community land trust property by issue paper 21-003 and ask for the board's consideration and action. As you will recall, this guidance is a long-term project that started in 2017 and involves the assessment, valuation, and exemption of property owned by a community land trust. Staff worked with stakeholders, including community land trust organizations, their representatives, county assessors, county councils, and other stakeholders. The guidance has been through many revisions and iterations and necessitated legislative changes to achieve the community land trust's desired treatment for property tax purposes. In summary, the guidance provides for three main things. Number one, when assessing property owned by a community land trust, the assessor must consider the restrictions placed upon that property. Two, there is a rebuttable presumption that the sales price includes the improvements and land. And three, the property is eligible for the welfare exemption for a limited period of time during the period it is held for development. Clear guidance from the board on the assessment of CLT property is needed to promote uniform treatment. The attached proposed LTA is the result of a lengthy discussion amongst interested parties who ultimately reached consensus on the proposed language. Thus, staff recommends that the board authorizes publication of the attached proposed LTA. I'm available for any questions you may have on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Young. I just have a quick one, seeing no other hands or comments right now. First of all, Mr. Young and your staff, I just want to thank you all and the interested parties, assessors and community land trusts, the CLT, property owners who worked very hard on this for many, many years. You all deserve high praise for developing the needed legislation and then refining the specific guidance necessary for everyone to follow as these projects move forward. I have a couple of questions just so I am clear about the key problems and solutions. First, if the CLT owns the land as a nonprofit, why can't they qualify for the exemption in every situation as long as they sell or lease the home to a low-income family?
Sure, if I may address that, sir. The welfare exemption is provided in Revenue Taxation Code 214, and that code contemplates property used for rental housing. So if you sell the unit, it's owned housing. It doesn't fit within the scope of the existing 214, the provision of the Revenue Taxation Code that allows for that exemption. So if it's developed for rental housing, an apartment or anything like that, then it would fit. But in this one particular scheme, it's contemplated that they actually sell the property, the improvements to a qualified buyer. So that's why it would not fit. Once it's sold, it's no longer rental housing.
My second question, and I see a hand from Ms. Stowers,
Yes.
is then who gets the benefit of the equity in the property or the home or land, I guess, in this situation?
For the improvements, the model that the CLT uses, Community Land Trust uses, is that it's shared. It's shared amongst the Community Land Trust and the homeowner. And there are different provisions as to what percentage each one will receive. So that's a contractual thing, and it's provided for them in their purchase agreement. And the land ownership itself basically stays with the land trust. That is one of their models. One of the tenets of their model of development is that they keep the land under their own ownership so they can basically preserve the low-income housing stock through time.
So it's kind of like a deed restriction protection for them. Okay.
It is.
Thank you. Ms. Stowers, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. I just want to say, job well done. You guys started this project, I believe, mid-2017, and realizing that there was a lot of gaps in the legislation and what the stakeholders were looking for. I just want to commend you and your team for sticking it out and being dedicated for getting it done. And now that we have something I believe that all parties can work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Controller Stowers.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other questions or comments for Mr. Young? Seeing none. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item? Or any of the assessors that might want to comment on this?
At this time, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if any assessors might be on the line?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there are any assessors or clerks who would like to comment on this matter? AT&T operator, can you let us know if there are any assessors or clerks who would like to comment on this matter?
Mr. Chair, I just want to let you know I have a question. I have some small comments.
Okay, there are people queuing up at this time. There'll be a moment. All right, the operator has muted himself, so we need to get him unmuted, and then we'll be able to proceed.
While we're waiting, let me have Member Cohen. I know she has a question. And Ms. Stowers, I see a hand, but I think that's an old hand, right? I see a smile. I guess it is. Member Cohen, you want to go ahead while we're waiting? Or,
Yes, I'll go. I've got about a minute and a half worth of comments that I just wanted to read to the record. So first, I always want to start with gratitude. Ms. Fleming, thank you for your staff and your leadership. Director David Young and Senior Counsel Richard Moon, I also appreciate your work and the alternatives that you have prepared for us today. As I stated on many occasions, the Board of Equalization needs to work with all the concerned taxpayers, all the parties, taxpayers, county assessors, practitioners, stakeholders, the legislature, as well as the governor's office. And we're doing this to ensure that we provide appropriate relief in response to the pandemic. I commend the drafts of statutory amendments to the Revenue Tax Code Section 155 and Government Code Section 15620. It seems that these amendments can provide the authority to extend deadlines for local governments to complete official acts during a calamity. I'm sorry, lost my notes here. I lost my notes, Mr. Chair. Please just come back to me later. We'll go ahead.
Not a problem.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Ms.
Yes, go ahead.
Taylor. I believe we have the AT&T operator back up and running.
Let's go with AT&T.
And as a reminder, if you do have a comment, please press 1 then 0. Our first comment comes from the line of Mark Darius. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Vasquez and board members, thank you very much. Just wanted to say thank you to staff and to the board for your consideration of the Community Land Trust and Network, as well as the Irvine Community Land Trust, which I represent. We support the action that's in front of you and are basically here just to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and thank you for chiming in. Do we have any others? Ms. Taylor?
We have no further on the phone lines.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, actually, I just wanted to make one last little comment on this item. Remember, since the issue paper presents us with a proposed LTA that all parties have agreed upon, I move that we approve the staff's recommended language in attachment A of the LTA on the assessment and exemption of community land trust housing.
Second.
And it's been seconded by Ms. Stowers. And I see a hand from Member Cohen. Is that an old hand, Member Cohen? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Seeing no other hands or comments.
You can call the roll.
Ms. Taylor, if you can call the roll.
Certainly. The motion on the floor is a motion to approve staff's recommended language in attachment A for the LTA on the assessment and exemption of community land trust housing. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stour.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Thank you with that. And Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
Yes. The next item is K3B, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, Operational Updates, Report on the status of pending and upcoming projects, activities, and departmental issues. This item will be presented by Mr. Young.
Thank you again, Ms. Taylor, and good afternoon again, Chair Vasquez, honorable members of the board. This is David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. I will make some brief comments on the operational updates for the Property Tax Department, and then turn it over to Ms. Lumsden and Mr. Jack McCool, Chief of the separate County Assessed Properties Division and the State Assessed Property Division, to give you extra details on each division's operations. So as a whole, the Property Tax Department actually is doing very well this month. Our work, as mentioned by Ms. Renati earlier, continues on our process improvement project. Staff is looking over and reviewing many of our processes in which we follow for our work. In the County Assessed Properties Division, much work continues on the implementation of Prop 19 and SB 539. For our State Assessed Properties Division, work continues on the assessment appeals and our audit of state assessees. So things are moving along well. We are keeping up, and we're actually doing really well. So If there are no questions for me, I will turn it over to Ms. Lumsden to give the next 3 reports for the County Assessed Properties Division.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable board members. This is Patty Lumsden. I'm the Chief of the County Assessed Properties Division. Today, I'm going to be giving you 3 brief reports on the following 3 BOE programs: letters to assessors, appraisal training and certification, and assessment practices surveys. These brief reports are for your information only and do not require a specific action to be taken. First, I will start with a brief report on letters to assessors. Attached to the agenda this month is a memo on letters to assessors. This memo provides a list of the LTAs that have been issued since our last board meeting and provides a link to the BOE's website where a list of all LTAs issued to date can be found. So far to date for calendar year 2021, BOE staff have issued a total of 48 LTAs, and 2 of those LTAs have been issued since our last board meeting. The first LTA was to issue a report of salaries and benefits of employees for California County Assessors offices, County Assessment Appeals Board members, county hearing officers, and those comparable positions from the BOE's Property Tax Department. And the second LTA provided notification that the BOE, after holding a public hearing, amended the following rules from the BOE's Rules for Tax Appeals. Those rules were 5216, 5240, 5262, and 5570. These amendments were approved by the Office of Administrative Law and became effective on June 21st, 2021. And that concludes my report on letters to assessors, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I see no hands or comments, so continue.
Okay, I'll move on to my next report, which is on the BOE's appraisal, training, and certification. Since our last meeting, we have taught 3 more virtual classes of our most requested courses, and to date during calendar year 2021, we have taught a total of 16 virtual classes and trained a total of 524 students. And that concludes my report on training and certification, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I see a hand from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yes, thank you, Chair Vasquez. I just wanted to thank Ms. Lumsden for all of her efforts in the training program. I'm really encouraged by our ability to teach classes and look at new technologies and options. Some of this brought forward, I think, as a result of the pandemic, but you know, any technology that we can use to make sure that employees at county assessors getting proper training is really encouraging. So I want to thank you for your efforts. That number, I think you said it was over 500 people that attended classes. So that's very encouraging to hear. And I know that you're interacting with our county assessors on a regular basis too on how to provide even more services, more classes.
Yes, thank you for those comments, Member Gaines, and you are correct. It is 524 students to date, and we still have a few more that we're adding to that number. And our training and certification staff has been working really hard behind the scenes, and we've been working really closely with the county assessors and their staff in constantly improving these virtual trainings. So I really appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
There are no other questions. I'll move on to my last and final report.
Just one
Sure.
quick one, Ms. Simpson. You know, along those same lines, it sounds like kind of like maybe the silver lining here in COVID, with COVID, that you're actually probably getting more participation, almost like our BOE meetings. You know, especially when we've had these hearings. Sometimes we get 300, 400, 500 people on the line. When we have these things in person, we get maybe 10 people showing up to the meeting. Is that what you're experiencing as well in these classes?
Well, what we have been able to do, and we haven't been able to extend the amount of students in the class. We've managed to expand it out to between 35 to 40 students. But anything we found above that is kind of takes away from the training for the students. So we want to make sure that we still have that, even though it's not one-on-one, but it still is a more personal ability to assist the students in these more difficult classes. So we've had to keep the number still at 35 to 40, but what we have been able to do is offer more classes on a regular basis. We've been offering 2 to 3 classes a month, which is a lot. So that has really helped us expand this, quite a bit from what we were able to do before. So that's really what it has allowed. And we definitely are still looking at, our in-person classes because they are valuable, and some of the more difficult classes are, needed to be probably taught in person. This is just during COVID that we've been able to continue teaching under these circumstances. So as once we are more able to go and meet in person, we will be doing some of those training classes in person again, and we will probably still keep some of them in a virtual format, just in order to be able to reach out to more assessors and their staff, because it kind of works a little bit for everyone to have these virtual classes as well as the in-person classes.
Thank you. I see a hand from Member Cohen.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lumsden, what are the costs or the cost savings associated with these trainings?
Yes, well, I don't have those exact numbers for you, but the classes are free. So there's no cost to the assessor's staff to attend them or our own staff to attend them. But that has always been the case. But what it does save is traveling expenses for both our instructors and then also for assessors and their staff who have to travel to go to these classes when we do have them in person. So while we can't go to all 58 counties to have these classes, so we will typically in the past when we would have an in-person class, we would try to stage them so that they would be in an area that would multiple counties would be able to attend that area, but it still would possibly require some traveling. And the classes are a week long, so that would require them to stay in a hotel. So all those expenses in this format have been eliminated. So that is.
So hold on. So my question is if those expenses have been eliminated, who bears the burden of those costs? The assessors that are receiving the training, obviously they're paying for their room, maybe a per diem, gas, all that kind of stuff. So I know that there's a cost to the assessors. Is there a cost to the Board of Equalization in terms of like material, printouts, or are you just sending a link? I don't know if you're mailing, we get packets for our board meetings. Do you do that same for the attendees in these courses?
My understanding is we have links that we provided to the students where they can go onto our assessor portal to collect those materials for the classes. We also, like I said, our cost savings is in our own instructors not having to travel. And then again, which cut down on some of the printing and the materials that needed to be sent with them as well.
Okay. So I have heard really positive feedback from my assessors about the virtual courses. They're happy to see them and even happier that they're online. It just seems to be just easier to get to and more of a cost savings. Is there a way that we can continue to do this and always keep our classes online and accessible?
So that is kind of our game plan going forward, as Chairman Vasquez pointed out, is there's been some kind of silver lining in COVID, which has forced us to do this virtual training. And so it's helped us, and it's been a learning experience for all of us to see how beneficial these virtual training classes are. So our intention is to keep them, but we do plan on trying to have some in-person classes as well, because part of what we're finding is some of the more difficult classes that have a lot of mathematical calculations involved are a little bit more difficult to teach in a virtual format, although we're doing our best to make those accommodations and adjust to that, and we're constantly making improvements with that. But that is what we're kind of finding. So we still probably will be teaching some in-person classes going forward, and there's just some students that learn, that is learning for them. They learn better to being there in person. And so we want to still be able to accommodate that. So we plan on doing both going forward.
Yeah, I understand that and definitely going to appreciate it. And I've heard that in the feedback. How do you determine which courses you will keep virtual and which one you will bring back to the classroom?
Well, we will probably do that based upon, as I stated before, as to how difficult the classes are and the mathematical calculations, and then we see the percentage of pass and fail rates, and we keep track of all of that, as well as the comments. We actually collect comments from the students in regards to their experience with the classes. And then plus on top of that, our feedback that we get from the assessors and the assessors management and supervisor staff as well.
What was the training budget in, say, 2019 compared to what the training budget is for 2020? I'm just trying to get at least a quick analysis as to how I would imagine there's cost savings. I just wanted to know what that figure is. And if you can't get your hands on it now, maybe you can come back before the end of the meeting and just let me know, or give it to Ms. Fleming and she can just read it to us.
Yes, I appreciate the question. I don't have that information
Okay.
To be able to give you.
Okay.
This time.
Would you be able to get it easily?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So
Not a problem.
back to you on that.
Not a problem. I'll just pose that to the executive director. She's nodding. She looks like she may know the answer. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the microphone. Back to you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you would continue, or is it Ms. Lumpson you're going to continue?
Yes, I still have one more report to give.
Go ahead.
So my last report is on the assessment practices surveys. And so far to date for calendar year 2021, we've completed and issued assessment practices survey reports for 7 counties. Those are San Diego County in District 4, Alpine County in District 1, Yuba County in District 1, Orange County in District 4, Lassen County in District 1, Calaveras County in District 1, and Nevada County in District 1. These survey reports were issued via letters to assessors and are posted on the BOE's website. In addition, we are actively working on completing surveys and/or samples for 12 other counties, 7 in District 1, 4 in District 2, and 1 in District 3. These surveys and/or samples are in various stages of completion. Once the survey and/or samples are completed and the reports are ready to be issued, prior to issuance via letters to assessors and posting to the BOE's website, a copy of the report is provided to each of the board members and their office for preview. In addition, staff continues to conduct these surveys and samples remotely, and they continue to improve this process by looking for inefficiencies and ways to improve the program during these remote surveys. This concludes my report on assessment practice surveys, and I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no hands or comments.
Okay, I will go ahead. If there's no questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Jack McCool.
Good morning again, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. My name is Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. Today, I will provide information on the status of ongoing work in our division. Staff continue to work on preparing the annual revision of our state assessee property statement forms in preparation for the 2022 appraisal season. Each year, senior SAPD staff identify changes that are needed to each industry's property statement reporting forms. Most changes involve updating dates within the body of the forms, but other changes are made to incorporate improvements to make the forms less confusing for assessees, as well as the removal of sections that are no longer needed. After SAPD staff identifies needed changes, we work with our partners in CDTFA's Forms and Publications Unit to make the changes to the forms and ready them for posting on our webpage. The hard copy versions of the forms are mailed to state assessees each year at the end of December and are due on March 1st. Staff also continue to work on property tax audits. Some audits are nearing completion while others have been completed and are going through the review process. Most of our senior staff have been working on petitions, such to the extent that our petition season starts to wind down, we will have more staff available to review completed audits. Other audits remain in progress, and staff are working closely with assessees to complete those audits timely. Finally, staff continue to work diligently on state assessed appeals. At this month's board meeting earlier today, the board acted on 8 petitions in total. Staff continue to work with assessee representatives on the remaining petitions in an attempt to resolve the remaining issues. Appeals conferences was scheduled with 8 assessees earlier this month, and the last group of remaining petitions will be presented to the board at the December board meeting. That concludes my report on the status of our division's ongoing work for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCool. I just have one quick question. You mentioned that there's new forms that will be published soon. Will they be available to the members for review prior to publication?
So our annual forms revision is essentially an updating of existing forms. So to my knowledge, I don't believe we have any new forms that we're creating this year. Our typical process involves an internal division review of the forms by the industry leads and all the way through from our management team through a review by myself. After our division review is completed, we go through a second clearance process of review through the agency, which would include the legal department, the taxpayer rights advocate, as well as the executive office. It's at that point after we've had review from the division and through the agency that we will then send our revisions to the forms and publication unit for them to update the actual forms and place on the website. So the members are not typically involved in the process. And again, as far as I can recall, I don't believe we've created any new forms or schedules to existing forms for this year.
Thank you. Okay. I guess I misunderstood. I thought you were coming out with a couple of new ones.
To my knowledge, I don't believe we have any new forms this year. This is just an annual process where we're updating versions of the forms. And then some years we do add new forms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, do we have any comments or questions for Mr. McCool? Seeing and hearing none, I'll let you continue.
That concludes my summary of our ongoing work in our division for this month. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T before we move on?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
And if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we do not have anyone queuing up for a comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is K3C, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, Operational Updates, Welfare Exemption Process Improvement Project. Report on the status of the agency's Welfare Exemption Process Improvement Project. This matter will be presented by Mr. Young.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Thank you again. Good morning again, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. David Young here, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. Today, I will provide you with an update of the Welfare Exemption Supplemental Clearance Certificate Process Improvement Project. Since the last board meeting, staff continues the detailed work of reviewing each step and requirement in the welfare exemption process of granting an SCC, a Supplemental Clearance Certificate. Our project plan, which is attached to this month's agenda, highlights our goals for the project and illustrates the 3 processes we have identified as opportunities for improvement and ways to increase efficiency when processing an SCC claim. We have made progress in our examination of the application process itself. Staff analyzed and revised the checklist and the claim form, which was submitted for internal review and is currently in the final stages of review. The outcome of these revisions will make it less cumbersome for claimants to navigate the SCC claims process and makes the claims forms more friendly in order to accomplish our goal of providing more clear and concise application, a more clear and concise application process. Once the internal review process is completed, we will then be able to move on to phase 2 of the application process, which is the planning and design phase. As we move forward in this process, we will continue to provide updates and information regarding our progress and improvements to allow for visibility into the process and to ensure that the board members are kept informed. Members, this concludes my presentation. I am available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. My question is related to the taxpayer education regarding the project. Is there any information about this project on our website?
Sir, the answer to that is that there is information. We actually have a dedicated portion of our website to the welfare exemption in general and in specific to the SCC process. We do have a separate project page on our property tax site, and right now it does not include any information on this. This is, I believe, probably just a little bit premature for it to be announced on our project page. Usually the project page involves, we're asking for input from other parties and other stakeholders. So far, it's been an internal review, but as the project progresses, I will work with our executive director and our communications officer and make any announcements or amendments to our web pages in order to bring more visibility into it.
I appreciate it, yeah, because I think it's so important because, you know, the public relies so much on our information, especially the instructions and forms as you modify them and improve them.
Right.
So that'd be great.
Thank you.
Members, any other comments or questions? Oh, yeah, I see one member going. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I do have a couple comments. So thank you to the BOE staff for providing the language of the proposed statutory and constitutional amendments. And that's all I wanted to say. Just wanted to provide remarks.
Thank you. Any other hands or comments? Seeing no others. Ms. Taylor, do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
And if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we have no one queuing up for a comment at this time.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please introduce our next item.
Our next item is K4A, Legislative Research and Statistic Division Chief's Report, Constitutional Amendment, Proposed Draft Language. Discussion and presentation of proposed draft language to amend the California Constitution to provide base year value transfer deadline extensions for certain residents for the time during which a governor proclaimed emergency exists. This matter will be presented by Mr. Weatherby.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Good morning, Chair Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer, and honorable members of the board. This is Dustin Weatherby, Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. Today, I'll provide a report to the board regarding the interested parties meeting on Friday, where staff discussed possible amendments to 3 property tax provisions, 3 parts of the Constitution dealing with base year value transfers that were discussed as one item, and 2 statutes with stakeholders to gather feedback and input on the proposed language. This discussion will also include Mr. David Young and Mr. Richard Moon, who have been critical in the development of the language and the interested parties meeting. So attached to the public agenda notice, I provided you with 2 drafts regarding possible legislative changes to the board that have been discussed in previous board meetings and reflect some of the feedback and input staff received during Friday's interested parties meeting. As a note, members, for these two legislative drafts, today I will only provide a report on the meeting and the corresponding language. The first legislative draft would amend 3 different provisions of the California Constitution. These amendments would provide additional time for taxpayers to comply with the constitutional provisions relating to the purchasing or new construction of a replacement property to transfer the taxpayer's previous base year value. These 3 provisions relate to base year value transfers for seniors, disabled persons prior to April 1st, 2021, base year value transfers for seniors, disabled persons, and victims of wildfire or natural disasters added by Proposition 19 occurring on or after April 1st, 2021, and properties damaged or destroyed in a governor-declared emergency. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor's emergency order made it difficult for taxpayers to comply with these constitutional provisions, which required the purchase or new construction of a replacement property when they set period to qualify for base year value transfer. For example, the resulting economic shutdown resulted in some taxpayers not having their homes completed in time as construction work ceased. This proposal would authorize additional time for taxpayers to meet the requirements of these sections and to keep the respective base year values for the replacement properties. The proposed language was an updated version of language presented to the board in the August issue paper and discussed with participants at the interested party meeting. The proposed changes provide a deadline extension cap of 3 years. Prior language left the deadline extension open, and given the enactment of Senate Bill 303 in 2021, which contained a hard deadline cap, staff incorporated similar changes in these proposals. During the IP meeting, no substantive issues or disagreements were identified. If adopted by the board next month, members would be responsible for finding a legislative author and guiding the legislation through the legislative process, including negotiating amendments and providing written letters of support. Members, this will conclude my report on the constitutional amendment items.
Thank you. I just have one quick question. So basically, there's no, I guess there's a consensus among the parties on the proposed language before us. Is that correct?
I think for the question, Chair Vasquez, so no one attending the interested parties meeting voiced any concerns or suggested changes to the staff's proposed language, but participants have not had an opportunity to fully review and discuss final language with their respective organizations.
Thank you. I see a hand. I think that's still a good hand from Member Cohen.
Yeah, thank you. I think that what we need to do is take action today on the proposed constitutional amendments. You heard in the report, it's not controversial, and most importantly, it will provide relief for taxpayers. So I think it's important for us to move forward the amendments to provide time to get the 2/3 support from both houses in the legislature in order for it to appear on the November 22nd general election ballot. And unlike the proposed statutory changes, these constitutional amendments must be re-referred timely by the legislature so that printing deadlines can be met. So in the interest of assuring that there's no delay in this process, I'd like to move that the board endorse the language for the constitutional amendment today so that we can continue to moving forward in this legislative process. I've got a motion for you to consider that the board support the language for the proposed constitutional amendments before us today, that this would provide relief for taxpayers who were unable to complete certain property transfers within the 2-year requirement, and that we also direct the executive director to work with her staff to ensure that they secure an author for these constitutional amendments. That's my motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second it for discussion.
Thank you.
And I see a hand up from Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. I understand the need for some taxpayers may have relief, and we have been talking about this proposal for quite some time. I still don't have any analysis on the impact. We have a minimum statewide impact as far as revenue, but property tax levies are assessed, or the benefits from property tax levy go down to schools and local government, no analysis on what this would do for them. So no real, there's an assertion in the language that taxpayers were unable to meet certain deadlines because of COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order. And I believe a statement was just met that maybe construction stopped, but I don't see that analysis. Everything that I've read showed that people continue to buy homes, people continue to build homes. So I'm not really sure if this is really needed. And then finally, the motion is directing Ms. Fleming to, I believe you said Ms. Fleming to
Find a sponsor.
Find a sponsor. I don't think that's appropriate for Ms. Fleming. I think that is something that the elected officials should be doing, because this is going to require a constitutional change, and it's going to go before the voters. So I think that that's something that electeds should be doing. I will be, and I'm also concerned that under state law and our own governance policy, board members are not allowed or banned from participating in items that's a ballot measure because it's seen to be interfering in the election process. So if the members can't participate on the ballot measure, I'm not overly convinced that the members can participate or sponsor legislation that's going to change the Constitution. And I've been asking this question repeatedly, and I haven't gotten any legal analysis to say that it's within the board's member scope to do this. So I have a lot of concerns with this one. And finally, I understand that whatever the board decide, whatever legislation that they present, if they find an author or whoever finds an author, it could be subject to change. And what you put in may not be what you get out. Think about Prop 19. So I'm also concerned with that and how it may have a negative impact.
Mr. Chair, may I address Ms. Stowers?
Yes, go ahead.
So first, a couple things. I think taxpayers have testified before this body, before this board, at the taxpayer rights hearing that they could not meet the 2-year deadline. This is a compassionate measure that we need, compassionate measure we need to be in favor of for taxpayer relief. Also want to note, Mr. Weatherby's words, not mine, but these proposed amendments are controversial. So with all due respect, Yvette, I feel like you're making a mountain out of a little bit of a molehill. This is not a controversial issue. It's not difficult to navigate. I believe this body has a constitutional responsibility to act on behalf of all taxpayers, those that can afford a lobbyist and those that cannot afford a lobbyist to act on their behalf. And we are acting on behalf of everybody's interest. And I think that's important for us to take action today. The proposed amendments are, like I said, are uncontroversial. We need to provide time to continue for it to work in the legislature. Now, I understand that there may be a desire for more vetting of the statutory proposals, particularly Revenue Tax Code Section 155, but that will continue to happen. It will happen in both of the legislative houses. It will happen in a very public and transparent way. So unlike the proposed statutory changes, these amendments must be referred to the legislatures again so they can reach their print deadline. And I'm willing to take that, Ms. Fleming, not take the lead on finding an author. That's not a problem, but there is precedent where agencies have taken agency of their organizations and have worked with members of the legislature. This happens all the time. This is no different. I understand it may not be customary for the Board of Equalization, but bar none, it's still a legal. It still will be a legal transaction, and we still have the capability to do it. But I will own that, Ms. Fleming, so you don't have to worry about that. But we do need to work together so that we're in lockstep and united in that front. So again, the motion is really just to accept the proposed constitutional amendments before us today that the staff is bringing to us.
Chair Vasquez, I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Cohen.
Thank you.
And I have a hand up from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, I agree too. I think this is a great motion and proposal, and that I think a lot of people were caught off guard with the passage of Prop 19, and we heard a lot of those stories in our testimony. So I do think we should move forward with it. I also believe that we as members can go ahead and communicate with the legislature on measures that we think are good for our constituents. And so I am in support of the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more thing I'd like to add is that there is an appetite for these amendments that we are discussing. I just want the record to note that the legislature already passed similar legislation, Senate Bill 303, authored by Borges, for extending the deadline for disaster transfer. So there is already existing precedent that we will be bolstering that's already underway. Thank you for your comments, Senator Gaines. I appreciate that.
Member Cohen, so as a seconder, let me just be clear. The motion would be to move forward, and it sounds like you were comfortable to take that responsibility to find an author from the executive director, and it would be done by, I guess, a member like yourself or one of us, right? To find the author.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we're not putting it on staff, that's all. And you're good with that. Any other comments or questions from folks? Hearing and seeing none, Ms. Taylor, do we need to restate that motion, just to be clear?
Certainly. The motion is to move that the board endorse the language for the constitutional amendments provided today.
Thank you. And it's my understanding, Ms. Taylor, that we may have somebody on the line. I believe our president, Ms. Ernie Dronenberg, might be on the line.
All right. Let's go out to AT&T and see whether Mr. Dronenberg is there. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
And if there are any public comments on this matter, press 1 then 0 at this time. And at this time, we have no one queuing up.
All righty. And so with that, let me ask, see no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll on this motion.
Would you like to hold this vote for a few moments to give Mr. Dronenberg a chance to call in?
Sure, if he's out there.
Members, this is Brenda Fleming, Executive Director. It does appear Assessor Dronenberg is attempting to connect. So if we could just hold until he gets an opportunity to comment per his request.
Not a problem, I'll wait. I see another hand. Ms. Towers, go ahead, Ms. Towers.
Thank you. While we're waiting on Mr. Dronenberg, I want to say this. I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill. I still believe that we need to have analysis, thorough analysis on any proposal before we take sponsorship. And we don't have that. And I also believe that, well, that's the main issue. So I'm gonna not vote on this item today, and would have the controller, she can have the opportunity to whether support it once it gets down the street and we have real language with real analysis so that she is aware of what she's supporting.
Not a problem, that's good.
Malia.
Member Gaines, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to be at the meeting. I'm going to turn my camera off so I can eat my sandwich. So I just wanted to give you a heads up.
No problem. I was going to bring up in a few, well, actually, maybe after this next item, kind of do a little check with everybody in terms of a break here. And I know staff probably wants a break here soon, so let's get through this and we'll take that up and see what the will is of the members.
Let me check in with AT&T. This is Ms. Taylor. AT&T operator, is there anyone is there anyone on the line that would like to make a comment?
Once again, if there are any comments, press 1 then 0 at this time. And once again, we have no one queuing up at this time. Pardon me, we do have someone queuing up. One moment, please. We need to provide them the, oh, I'm sorry, they took themselves out of queue. Okay, one moment, please. We do have a line in queue. Just 1 second here. Okay, we have the operator gathering the information from their line. 1 second, please. We will go ahead and open up the line of Ernie Dronenberg. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thanks for your patience. I was on the live stream and I had to switch over, so I made it. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. Not a problem. Go ahead.
All right. I was just going to make a comment on Ms. Stowers' comments. I testified in several committees when I was on the board on different bills and constitutional amendments, and I was in the information bill that was circulated to all the voters, listed as the chairman of the Board of Equalization, and the Ledge Council had approved all of those things. So I think that the issue of whether or not it can be done has been taken care of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dronenberg, for that clarification.
And we have no further lines in queue at this time.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and take up the motion unless, Dustin, did you have any other item that you wanted to list in that would impact this motion, or can we take the vote and then let you complete your report?
I have no further comments, Mr. Chair, so we can go ahead and do the motion. Thank you.
All righty. Ms. Taylor, if you would go ahead and restate that motion and so we can vote.
Certainly. The motion on the floor is that the board endorse the language for the constitutional amendment provided today. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Abstain.
Sir, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Let me restate that. So that was, we did have a majority on that vote, so that'll move forward with one abstention. And let me just go back to Mr. Weatherby. Did you have anything else to add to your report, or is that concluded?
For the constitutional items, my report is concluded.
Okay, then I'll turn it back over to you to finish your report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the second legislative draft would amend Government Code Section 15620 to allow the board to extend deadlines for reports filed with the board by up to 60 days in the event of a public calamity. Adding this amendment will provide the board flexibility to grant an additional 30 days to report filers in the rare instances of a public calamity. Without a public calamity deadline extension, the board would be reliant upon future governors to issue executive orders that would authorize the board to extend such deadlines beyond the current 30-day statutory deadline. This proposed language presented no issues in staff's conversations with interested parties And this would conclude my report on this item.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Weatherby? Seeing I see thumbs up, I guess we're all good. Thank you for that presentation.
And would you like me to take I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, did you have something else?
No, my report's concluded. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, let me turn it back to Ms. Taylor. We didn't have any written comments on his report, did we?
We do not have any written reports on this item.
Okay. And now that he's concluded, let's just double check with AT&T if there is anybody on the line that wants to comment.
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there's anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter? K4B.
And to make a public comment on this matter, press 1 then 0 at this time. We have no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call our next item.
Our next item is K4C, Legislative Research and Statistics Division Chief's Report, Revenue and Taxation Code, Section 155, Proposed Draft Language. Discussion and presentation of proposed draft language to amend Revenue and Taxation Code, Section 155, to authorize the board or executive director to extend deadlines for the performance of any act by the county assessor or county board. This matter will be presented by Mr. Weatherby.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Just to clarify, I think we're still under K4B. This is going to be the discussion on possible statutory amendments to Revenue and Taxation Code Section 155. So I apologize.
No, thank you.
I apologize for any of the confusion I'm causing right now.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Weatherby. Let me recall the item.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
K4B, Legislative Research and Statistics Division Chief's Report, Government Code Section 15620, Proposed Draft Language, Discussion and Presentation of Proposed Draft Language to amend Government Code Section 15620 to authorize the board to extend deadlines for reports filed with the board. This matter will be presented by Mr. Weatherby.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. I believe we're on the next discussion, the final discussion item.
Okay, which one are we on, folks?
So members and staff, this is Brenda Fleming, I'm the executive director. So members, and thank you for your patience. We're now on K4C, the Research and Statistics Division Chief's Report on RTC 155.
Okay.
And information about that item and the interested parties meeting. And when Mr. Weatherby and Mr. Young are ready, we can just.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fleming. So members, the final provision discussed were amendments to Section 155 of the Revenue Taxation Code, which currently authorizes the BOE to extend deadlines for any act by the county assessor or county board for up to 40 days in the case of public calamity. Staff presented the two versions of amending RTC Section 155 from the August issue paper to members of the interested party meeting. For background, the first alternative would provide the board the authority to extend deadlines for up to 40 days in the case of public calamity, while the second version would allow a 40-day extension only by request by the county assessor or county board. Interested parties had significant concerns, issues, and disagreements relating to both of the proposals, and no draft language could be agreed upon. Concerns that were raised related to potential downstream effects of the deadline extensions on counties, the possible interruption of distribution of local revenue to jurisdictions, and the question of whether taxpayers could request a deadline extension. County assessors have not had an opportunity to discuss proposed language with the relevant committees, and individual assessors in attendance could not speak for all 58 counties. Representatives from the county clerks requested the board delay action on Section 155 until county officials can formally analyze and discuss the proposals in December. While staff did not see an issue with a delay, scheduling is, of course, at the board's discretion. We note that with a 1-month delay, while a potential proposal would not be taken up in December, January poses no additional issues, as the deadline for bill introduction is not until February 18th. An additional advantage of presenting language in January is that staff could draft a second version of RTC 155 to which interested parties would have time to comment, and the California Assessors Association Legislative Committee could take up at their December meeting. Staff would review any comments and possibly incorporate them into the draft presented to the board in January. Members, this concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Additionally, Mr. David Young is available to answer any technical questions and provide additional background information on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherby. I see a hand up from Vice Chair Schaefer. Go ahead.
Mr. Weatherby, I'm not really impressed with 40 days. I mean, why not 60 days? We don't have anything to say about that. Is there a calamity like COVID or maybe an atom bomb? I mean, there's so many kinds of problems that we could be faced with. Is it one size fits all? Was some thought given into picking the 20 days versus the 40 days? I mean, how big a calamity were they thinking about? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Vice Chair Schaefer, for those questions, comments. I'll go ahead and defer to Mr. Young to provide you with a formal answer. Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon, board members. David Young again here, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. So the 40 days was just our first proposal in our two drafts. There has been subsequent discussion of moving it to 60 days, but we are still not. We have yet to find consensus. There were many points in the discussion where we were not able to find consensus.
Thank you.
Of course.
Mike, are you muted?
Was there any other comments or questions? I just had a couple of quick ones for you, Mr. Weatherby. In summarizing, once again, I guess some of the key items here from the parties who want to see section 155 on the 155 proposal. At the interested parties meeting, it seemed there were three items, and let me just spell them out and see if I'm in line with you on this. The first one was the taxpayer may request an extension from the assessors or the AAB on the assessor, or the AAB may decide to submit it to the BOE. The second one is the length of extension for assessors should be less than the extension for the AABs. And the third was the extension for a 2-year limit for the AAB should not be unlimited. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Chair Vasquez. I also defer that to Mr. Young.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, sure. Let me see if I can answer them in order. So the first question is, let me do a quick. I'm sorry, can you repeat the first one? I'll answer them one at a time, please.
Sure, let me go back to the first one.
Yes.
The first one was the taxpayer may request an extension from the assessor or the AAB, and the assessor or the AAB may decide to submit it to the BOB.
Yes, so that is one of the major areas we did not find consensus. So the two sides had had positions they were advocating for. On the taxpayer side, they wanted the ability for the board to ask for an extension for taxpayers. So our second alternative was that if we amend the code section 155 so that the board can ask for an extension for the taxpayer, it would be at the request of either the county assessor or the county AAB. So that's what we contemplated, but there is no consensus on that yet. The taxpayer side would like that provision, but they want that provision. they want the provision at the discretion also of the taxpayer. They want the taxpayer to be able to ask for an extension for themselves. On the other side, on the county side, there is no consensus. They believe that when you extend something for the taxpayer, it has many downstream effects on the functioning of other county agencies, the auditor, the tax collector. So there are many downstream effects that they're worried about us being able to give that extension to taxpayers. So as of right now, we have yet to find consensus on that issue.
Okay, thanks. What about the length of the extension for assessors should be less than the extension for the AABs? And I guess kind of tied into that, the third one would be the extension for a 2-year limit for the AABs should not be unlimited. Is that correct?
Yes. So let me tackle the second one. The second one was also related to the issue of downstream effects. So if they were to grant AABs extensions, the contention was that if you grant the same lengthy extension to the assessor, then their ability to close the role on a timely basis and turn over the role will affect many other functions of local government. So they were very hesitant on that part. Once again, there has been no consensus on that issue. And the very last one stems from the clerks of the board. Part of their counter proposal, in their written comment to the board for our two suggested possible amendments to this code section was that we allow, or there's a provision in the law, amended into the law, to allow for subsequent extensions. So you can have an extension and then you can request at the board for another one. And there was some discussion on that. There was some pushback from the taxpayer side that being able to basically give serial extensions may delay and push back the taxpayers, the appellant's ability to have a hearing if you can extend it time after time after time.
Okay, thank you. With that, let me just turn to the members. If there's any other comments, questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if
yes,
I may.
Now we're going, Cohen, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the work that's been put into bringing us to where we are when we're addressing section 155. Here's a recommendation. It sounds like there is still a lot of continued discussion that needs to happen to allow further input. I believe that we are traveling down the right path and moving forward, but further away from really taking a vote or taking of action. So if it's possible, I'd like to continue discussing this item. Thank you.
I think that's where we're heading, unless there's other
suggestions
or comments from other folks. Because that was my point of raising these points, because I didn't think there was consensus on it.
Yeah, doesn't sound like there's consensus, and that's a good thing. We can.
That's okay.
Work on it.
All right. With that, Ms. Taylor, we didn't have any written comments on this, did we?
We do not have any written comments on this.
Let's check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line that maybe wants to chime in on this.
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, and once again, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. 1, 0. And we do not have anyone in queue for a comment.
Thank you. With that, members, I was hoping we can get through this next item, K5, and then take a break unless people have other preferences. And in checking with staff, I'm hearing that they're comfortable with that. But let me just check with the members. Are we good with that?
Sir, I'd like to take a break now, please.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's sufficient for you, Member Cohen?
20 minutes, I think that's what we usually take, 20 to
Okay,
30
because
minutes.
in checking with staff, they were comfortable with whatever we decided. So I wanted to check with you.
Thank you.
20 is good?
Yeah.
Hearing no other suggestions, we'll go ahead. Why don't we go ahead and take a 20-minute break now? It's 12:30, so at 12:50 we'll reconvene.
Members, just remember to mute your mics.
Don't forget to mute,
mics
yes.
and your cameras.
And your
Mute your
cameras.
mics and your cameras. Thank you.
I see everybody back on the line. If I can get Ms. Taylor to just call our next item.
Certainly. Our next item is K5, Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office Report, an update on the activities of the Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office. This matter will be presented by Ms. Wing.
Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and board members. Thank you. My name is Margie Wing, Senior Specialist for the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office to keep you informed. Lisa Thompson, our agency's appointed advocate, extends her regrets for not being here today. I am pleased to share with you some statistics on the number of cases completed last month by the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office and provide some insight on the types of cases we handled. In October 2021, we completed 19 cases. 6 were in Board Member Gaines District 1, 7 in Board Member Cohen's District 2, 2 were in Board Member Vasquez's District 3, and 4 were in Board Member Schaefer's District 4. Of the 19 cases completed, 2 were from the administrative category and 17 were from the valuation category. The administrative category includes topics such as creating and mailing tax bills, refunds, penalty cancellation, defaulted taxes, access to data, and special assessments or direct levies on the property tax bill. The valuation category includes topics such as change in ownership, declines in value, appraisal methodology, exclusions, exemptions, new construction, actual enrollment of values, assessment appeals, and general property taxation. With respect to the 2 cases in the administrative category, 1 case involved delinquent taxes and the second involved special assessments. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office assisted the taxpayers by providing information about property tax due dates and delinquency, as well as special assessment charges that are billed on the property tax bill. Additionally, in the case of delinquent taxes, we helped them understand what needed to be done in order to avoid the property from being sold at a county tax sale auction to satisfy the more than 5 years of back taxes owed. With respect to the valuation category, and its 17 cases in total, 2 cases pertain to decline in value, commonly referred to as Proposition 8. 1 case addressed change in ownership and a supplemental assessment. 9 cases addressed exclusion from reassessment, which pertain to the base year value transfer exclusion for persons aged 55 and older. 1 case pertained to the parent-child exclusion. 1 case involved the welfare exemption. 1 case pertained to the disabled veterans exemption, and 2 cases pertain to general property taxation. For the decline in value cases, the TRA office provided information on property taxation in California and the assessment of real property at the lower of its factored base year value or its current market value. The TRA office helped the taxpayers understand that even if an assessor assessed their property at the lien date market value because that value was below its factored base year value, a taxpayer can provide support to show that the lien date market value of their property was even lower. We indicated that they can contact the assessor's office to request an informal review of its value, and we also explained that their formal appeal rights and how they could find information on comparable sales to support their opinion of their property's value. With respect to the change in ownership case, it dealt with a reassessment of property when the owner died and the executor of the estate received a property tax bill for an escape assessment after the property had been sold by the estate. The TRA office explained to the taxpayer that the death of a real property owner causes a change in ownership that is subject to reassessment unless an exclusion applies, and that the estate would be responsible for the property taxes based on the increased assessment, even though the property was sold 6 months after the owner died and no one had occupied the property prior to selling it. We also explained that an unsecured bill was appropriate since the property was no longer owned by the estate as it had been sold to another party. During October, there were many cases involving exclusions, most concerning base year value transfers for seniors, which reflects the very pressing issues these days. 8 of the 9 exclusion cases addressed the base year value transfer exclusion for persons aged 55 and over, many who did not qualify because, due to COVID-19 pandemic issues, the taxpayer was unable to buy their replacement home or sell their original home within the 2-year time period required to complete the transfer. The TRA office explained the requirements of the base year value transfer provisions of Proposition 60 that was in place prior to the April 1, 2021 effective date of Proposition 19. Additionally, we explained the requirements for the base year value transfer under Proposition 19. Our office helped the taxpayers understand that neither our agency nor the county assessors have the authority to extend the 2-year deadline or to provide an exception to that deadline to enable them to qualify. We referred them to the constitutional and statutory provisions that require the purchase of the replacement property to be within 2 years before or after the sale of the original property. The TRA office also advised these taxpayers that our agency is well aware of the serious impact that COVID-19 has had on taxpayers. And in response to those who are challenged with meeting certain property tax deadlines during the pandemic, our elected board members are presently engaged in the discussion about property tax deadlines impacted by the pandemic and potential amendments to statutory and constitutional provisions that could be made. We directed the taxpayers to our website for the issue paper on property tax deadlines and encouraged them to listen to upcoming board meetings. We are very pleased that our agency has been proactive in trying to help taxpayers that miss certain deadlines due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that our agency's property tax department initiated the interested parties process for a project on property tax deadlines impacted by COVID-19. Earlier this month, interested parties were invited to submit comments on draft amendments and constitutional amendments, and on November 12, 2021, a virtual interested parties meeting was held. A link to this very important project was added on the front page of our agency's website under property tax projects in early November. With respect to the parent-child exclusion case, it involved a property being reassessed after the owners sold the property to another party. The property had been owned in trust by the taxpayer's mother, who had died over 10 years ago. The taxpayer never notified the assessor's office of the mother's death, and the son continued paying the property tax bills that were issued in the name of the decedent's trust. The TRA office explained the requirement to file a change in ownership statement to report the death of a real property owner, and that upon their death, it causes property reassessment. We helped the taxpayer understand that in order to receive exclusion from reassessment, a claim for parent-child transfer must be filed within 3 years of the owner's death or prior to selling the property, and unfortunately, he missed both of those filing deadlines. The TRA office completed work on 2 exemption cases, one pertaining to the welfare exemption and the other being the disabled veterans exemption. With respect to the welfare exemption case, the TRA office provided information on the co-administration of the welfare exemption, where our agency determines if an organization itself qualifies for the exemption, while the assessor in the county where the property is located is responsible for determining if the property of a qualifying organization qualifies for exemption. We help the taxpayer to understand the importance of fiscal year requested on the claim form filed with the assessor to enable them to receive the exemption for property acquired in past fiscal year. With respect to the disabled veterans exemption, we assisted the taxpayer in obtaining the exemption from the assessor, which I will discuss a bit more later. For cases involving general property taxation, the TRA office helped the taxpayer understand the assessor's process of reflecting a change in ownership for a new owner of real property, and that taxes owed by a tenant of a building generally would not impact the property tax liability of a real property owner to the county tax collector. Our office also provided information on the assessment of property in California and what is taxable. We directed the taxpayer to resources on our agency's website concerning California's property tax system. To provide additional insight on the workings of the TRA office with respect to the disabled veterans exemption case, the TRA office was contacted by a taxpayer who had been denied the disabled veterans exemption by a county assessor's office because a 100% disability rating was not indicated on his Veterans Administration letter. The TRA office coordinated with the assessor's office to explain that the veteran does in fact qualify for the exemption, even though his disability rating was at 80%, because the Veterans Administration letter indicated the veteran was being paid benefits at the 100% rate due to unemployability. The end result was that the assessor approved and the disabled veterans exemption claim was processed and a row correction was processed. The taxpayer has received a substantial reduction in property taxes through the disabled veterans exemption rather than receiving the homeowner's exemption. Members, this concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple hands up. Let me start with Member Gaines and then Vice Chair Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Vasquez. And I just wanted to recognize Ms. Wing for a great presentation. I appreciate that. I appreciate the detail that we're getting from the Taxpayer Rights Office on all these cases so that we can better understand as members what the challenges are for taxpayers in California. And I just wanted to highlight an example that you had brought up that was a property that was held in trust and the mother had passed away. And the son, I guess, had been paying the taxes and didn't know that he had to notify the assessor of the change of ownership. And that's really created, I mean, the challenge is the result of the passage of Prop 19. Is that not correct?
No, not that instance.
Not in that instance. Okay. Okay, because a property held in trust should naturally pass on to the trustees. So I'm a little confused as to why there'd be a reassessment of property that was in a trust that was now managed by the trustees.
Well, the short answer is that anytime a property owner dies, passes away, that causes the change in ownership, whether or not it's in the trust. So
the property, maybe someone could help because I need clarity on this, but I thought the property passed on to the heirs at the value of the property upon death. And so it would not create a taxable event.
Looks like Richard's going to jump in here.
Yeah, Member Gaines, this is Richard Moon with the legal department. For property tax purposes, it really depends on the terms of the trust. So for example, if the trust has beneficiaries that are the children, the property would be considered to pass to the children on the date of death, and there would be a change in ownership at that point. And then if they qualified for the parent-child exclusion or the intergenerational transfer exclusion from Prop 19, and they met all the requirements, they would qualify for that.
Okay.
If the trust terms state that it goes somewhere else, it's going to depend on who the beneficiaries are, whether there's actually a reassessment.
Okay, but barring Prop 19, if those beneficiaries were the children in that trust, wouldn't that have been a non-taxable event?
No. So what the change in ownership law requires is that whenever there's a passing of property, such as in an inheritance situation, there will be a change in ownership, and then you determine whether that's going to be excluded from reassessment or not.
Okay, but the reassessment occurs as a result of the passage of Prop 19, isn't that correct?
No, the reassessment would occur. Well, I should say the change in ownership is going to happen because of the law that's been under Prop 13. And then Prop 19 will determine whether there's actually going to be a reassessment between parent and child.
That's right. That's right. That's what I was trying to drive at. And I don't know the specifics of this event, this particular case, Ms. Wing, but I guess I want to reiterate the concern I have as a result of the passage of property from generation to generation that could create a taxable event if they don't live in that property. And I think that's still an issue that needs to be resolved, and we'll see what happens in the future to see if there is a solution that could be by statute or initiative. But this is a big deal for a lot of folks. I think a lot more than I had even anticipated based on what I'm hearing from my constituents. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Schaefer. I think you're muted though.
Thank you. You're right. Ms. Wing, I join in applauding your presentation today. I just had one question. You made reference to the fact that the assessor should determine the deaths. Does the assessor read the obituary page, or does the assessor coordinate with the Bureau of Vital Statistics within the county, I guess the county clerk, to pick up information? I assume every death there is a death certificate filed within a given county, and does that, as a matter of routine, pass by the county assessor's office? How do we prevent deaths not coming to public attention inadvertently?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the recorder's office sends in to the assessors periodically all such, death certificates, right?
That would seem logical.
Yeah, I believe the assessors do receive such information from the recorder's office.
And that would enable us to protect the public interest, but also get more importantly, to get the taxpayer in under the wire. So I would like to think that the amount of time between the death and when it comes to public notice is shorter rather than longer, and it definitely is within any limitations period applicable. I think we all agree on that. I just want to mention it, so if there's any inattentiveness, that can be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have our president, Mr. Dronenberg, that maybe wants to weigh in on the county side here. I thought I saw him on the screen. Oh, there he is.
Well, if Ted understands it, I'm gonna just not say anything.
I think he's okay. Thank you. Ms. Wing, I'll also chime in. It was a great presentation, but I noticed in your opening remarks, you mentioned, did I hear you correctly, that you said that they have 3 years to notify upon death?
For the parent-child exclusion, they must file a claim within 3 years or before the property is sold.
Oh, well, that's for the exclusion. So, but what happens?
Yes.
Well, what happens, like, I know under COVID, a lot of, sad to see we're losing a lot of older folks. And in that process, I was getting some calls from some folks that still hadn't reported the death. Now, obviously, the property, if you don't report it right away, you're still paying taxes on a property that was under, let's say, the parent before he or she passed away. So are they able to wait a year or two, or do they get fined if they reported, let's say, 2-3 years after the fact?
I'm not aware of what on that assessor side, what would occur.
Maybe that's a question for Ernie up there then.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, since I am also the recorder and the county clerk, the workflow goes from the filing of the death certificate with the county health authority. Then it usually is available to the mortuary, and we get it after it comes from the state of California. And then inside of our office, it goes from the county clerk down to the assessor. And then we will not wait for anybody to have their parent-child transaction recorded, but instead we will reappraise the property based on the time of death, because we can't assume that there's going to be a transfer to a kid, so we have to look at it. And if it's in a trust, and the easy way to look at the trust, and I don't want to confuse Mr. Gaines, but it's not taxed when it goes into the trust, but the legislature made the decision they'd rather have it taxed when it comes out of the trust. And so that's why it becomes taxable when there's a death, because we didn't tax it when you put it into this trust enigma. We taxed it, becomes that tax is really waiting it until the person dies. When the person dies, there's an automatic elimination of the trust, and it becomes taxable to the trust beneficiaries. Whether they are children, then they can apply for the parent-child transfers, but that's the timing. So it's never a thing of we're going to get it. Actually, it's a good thing by not taxing it going in, but only coming out. Hope that might be helpful.
Along those lines, though, so what happens in the case where, let's say it's not in a trust, so technically, I guess it goes into probate of some sort, and the siblings or the family members that are still alive don't report the death until a year or 2 years later, what happens then?
Well, we tax it when the death occurs, in essence, by getting the documents from the Department of Health through the state, through the mortuary, or where we get. As soon as we get the documents, then we put a tax on the ownership of the property. The property itself will be reassessed, and the ownership of the property at that time will be taxed.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yes, go ahead. Member Gaines, go ahead.
Just I just want to recommend that folks consider that they consider a trust, a living trust that just protects the family. I think you can get one you probably get one on LegalZoom, but you'd want an attorney to review it. And I think you could get a trust set up for probably $1,000. Probate costs tens of thousands of dollars. And so I just hate to have families go through that and end up spending, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 in probate that could be avoided with a trust.
That's a good point. Yeah. And you're right. I'm sure a lot of the listening and the public out there didn't realize or don't realize that it's easy to just set up a trust, relatively easy to set up a trust versus letting it fall into probate. All right. Any other comments or questions of this great presentation from Ms. Wing?
Thank you.
It might be a comment from Mr. Schaefer, who's probably done more estate work than any of us all put together, and understanding how things flow around a probate versus going through a probate, which is very important.
Smile.
Thank you, Ernie. I'll mention you in my will. No, seriously, I think that there's a natural human tendency to not go reporting any more than you have to, family passings and whatnot, and you may be shooting yourself in the foot. I'd like to see our assessors know everything and do everything, and perhaps have somebody on their staff that can make some phone calls and hunt up some people and say, you've got 90 days to file something, or you may have some financial consequences. So nobody's really going to be able to say, I didn't know. I think it would be nice if we could help them know. Thank you.
I've got a special person set up in my recorder's office where the clerk is also there to inform people. A lot of widows come in and they're devastated and they have no idea what to do. So we've designated one person to handle widows and to tell them, for example, well, I need a death certificate. No, ma'am, we would suggest you get 8 or 9, maybe 10 death certificates, because the cost is not going to change, but you're going to be requested for original death certificate from certain peoples, and to save you the grief. And we also tell them about, here's where and we're very careful on the line of practicing law, because we can't do that, but we can give them suggestions that you need to, if their estate is large enough, you need to see your CPA or your accountant right away, because of deadlines that you might be blowing, and to relate to these people as to what other documents they may need, and try to facilitate, because I can't tell you how many calls that I've fielded from friends who are just really lost, men as well as women, when it comes to a surprising death.
No, that's a good point. And I'm glad to hear that you are being a little bit on the aggressive side in terms of going out and providing that service.
Mr.
Vice Chair Schaefer, yes, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Johnberg, do other assessors know about the good work that you're doing, and hopefully find a place for it within their jurisdiction too? Ernie?
We may have lost him.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
You can't lose me.
I mean, there are 57 other counties, but they're all different sizes, And,
yeah, and sometimes you're walking up to a counter and you're talking to both people at once in some of the smaller offices, and they might be helpful. I speak about what we think is best practices often with the assessors, and so I can't tell you whether they absorb it or not, but that's what we do. As I said, my personal experiences is what led me to this conclusion. I lost a wife, and I was as much education as I had in finance and accounting and such. I was lost at that time, and so I appreciated the help, and that's why I started this like that. And I get calls from a really high-powered attorney woman. She says, "I have no clue. He died, and and I don't know what to do. And so it's not just understanding the law, it's the people's emotional state where you can be a real helpful person to them.
If you have a chance to write an article in Assessor magazine or do some writing while you're still with us to share this great mind of yours, I would ask you to do as much of that as you can, because it's a resource that we're not going to have forever unless we document it in writing. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with what Mike Schaefer said. I think that, Ernie, I appreciate your wisdom and what you're sharing with us. And oftentimes we can lose sight of the human element, the emotional element, because we want to just talk about policy. We just always want analysis. We always want to collect data. And we really lose sight of who we're truly representing. And these are people that are feeling with emotions, highs and lows. And that is a wise, cautionary piece of advice. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in too, if I could, through the chair. Thank you, Ernie, and thank you, Mike, for bringing these issues up. And I'm really encouraged, Ernie, that you've got someone right in your, I guess it's in the recorder's office or the clerk's office, that's addressing these issues for people that become a widow or widower. And that's a tough time in someone's life. So just providing that guidance is helpful. And I think, it is probably a recommendation for all the county assessors, but I know that also some of these smaller county assessors, they'll give you a little extra advice just by going up to the desk and asking the question. So I think I like the idea that Mike suggested, that if we give you a little homework, would you be willing to write an article? That's a great idea, and get it out there.
All right.
Vice Chair Schaefer, yes.
I had a question from my staff. If a trustee of a trust is out of state, and after the property owner dies, for some reason the trustee does not pay or refuses to pay additional assessments, how does our state of California force the out-of-state trustee to pay the property tax? We had a case, one of my staff members' family had a case where they didn't pay the supplemental assessment, and when the assessor sent the trustee the bill, the assessor out of state refused to pay it. Is there something we can do about that?
Yes, it's very simple. You sell the property.
That seems logical, yes.
You have the lien on the property and it expires. It's a legal cause to sell the property, and they see a notice of sale, you'll be getting that supplemental pretty quick.
Thank you.
A strong stick instead of a carrot, I guess.
Well, you only have so many carrots. Pretty soon you got to use a stick. That's what it's there for.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, we don't have any written comments on this item, do we?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T in case there's somebody on the line?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
And once again, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we do not have anyone queuing up for comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call our next item.
The next item is M1, Public Policy Hearings, Proposition 19, Implementation. Items that appear under these matters provide information to the members and may require board action or direction. There are no staff reports or external speakers for this agenda item for this month's meeting. However, persons who wish to address the board on this topic as a public comment may do so. This matter will be presented by Chairman Vasquez.
Thank you. As an ongoing agenda item, we always post this, and let me first open it up to the members if there's any comments before I open it up to the public. Seeing none. Ms. Taylor, we don't have any written comments on this, do we?
Correct, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T in case there's somebody on the line?
AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we do not have anyone queuing up for comments.
Thank you. With that, if there's no further comments from anybody or anyone of us, any of the members, I will close the public policy hearing on this and ask Ms. Taylor to call our next item.
The next item is N, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Persons who wish to address the Board of Equalization regarding items not on the agenda. Please note that the board cannot take action on items not on the agenda. However, the board can schedule issues raised by the public for consideration at future meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. We don't have any written comments on this, do we?
Today we have one written comment, and
Okay.
I will read that. It is from Stacy Ann Starr. I really hope that San Mateo County would distribute their government housing funds so that it was made available to longtime residents like myself, who has lived in Redwood City for 27 years, contributing to my community in many ways. I am 54 years old and a full-time employee at Sequoia High School, having been with the district for 18 years. I am in an immediate housing crisis, living in unhealthy conditions, and have been searching for affordable housing close enough to my job so I can get there by 6 a.m., which is the time required to start with my position, being lead of food service. I do not own a car or a DL and never have. I have lived in a 2-mile radius in Redwood City for 27 years and am now at the doorstep of displacement, which would result in job loss and financial devastation, as I watch every other demographic filling up new housing that is being built and available exclusively for newcomers, homeless, people just out of drug programs or jail, and are within walking distance of my job. But I've been told that the only available affordable housing for my low-income, working class, undervalued, and underrepresented demographic are in communities that are many miles away from where I need to reside to continue working the 11 years left I have to retire. When these other groups that are not even working, for the most part, are given priority in housing in the exact area I require to continue my contributions to my community, as I have done for more than 20 years. I would also like to be able to help those people in need, but I am busy in survival mode. I was told I did not make enough annually to qualify for below market rate affordable housing when I applied for the one available that I found listed on Redwood City website under Resource for Affordable Housing. And then I am told I make too much to qualify for any immediate rental assistance, so I'm stuck in the revolving door, a forgotten group of people who are working every day but have been excluded from access to millions of dollars in funds that were supposed to be helping everyone, but instead is creating the destruction of a group of people who have served this community for years without any consideration, respect, or appreciation for the benefit we offer to the community we live in. Why is there no priority in the preservation of people who are a positive additions and self-sufficient in this city? Replacing us by filling up the housing with people who will be a long financial expense instead of securing people who are and have been working class taxpayers for many years and only need a bit of assistance with housing because we are being denied and ignored by our local government's bad policy. How does this make sense? Please help me understand. I appreciate any attention that you might give to this unethical civil injustice that is being ignored. and given no priority or the recognition that it deserves. This is a real American tragedy that should not be allowed to happen. Stacy Starr.
Stacy, you know, I hear this comment actually in a lot of local cities where it's true. You find a lot of folks that are kind of caught in the middle here. They're not able to access affordable housing because they either make too much money or they don't make enough. And I'm wondering if anybody on staff, if we can have at least somebody respond back and at least share whatever information or resources we may have available to this individual. I'm assuming that happens, Executive Director Brenda, but just in case it's not on our radar, we should send off a response. And I see a hand up from Member Gaines. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Member Vasquez. I agree. I think that is the least we could do is see if we could review this at the BOE and get back to this constituent and see if if all the programs have been exhausted that might be available to her. It's a chronic issue in California particularly, but even nationwide. And I think we need to also look at how do we drive down the cost of housing. And I think we need regulatory reform to help out with that. CEQA I've talked about many times, and yet it never changes. But you know, it was intent to mitigate environmental impact, not to create litigation and stop projects so they couldn't move forward. I think there are some inroads being made in terms of innovation. Elon Musk has talked about new forms of housing that are basically kits. They're housing kits that can be put together on the site and with great savings in construction costs. There are also 3D technology being used for homes that are constructed out of concrete per a program that is in a 3D printer style format that actually builds the walls up with a robot type computer program. But bottom line is it drops the cost about 20% on construction. And so we need to continue to look at ways that we drive that cost down, that we bring the regulatory costs down. I would sure like to see a lot more housing built, just smaller housing for folks so that they'd have an opportunity to buy a home.
I'm sorry, Chairman Vasquez, members, I just want to caution the board, this is an N item. It's not agendized for discussion or action. I appreciate that this is a subject that the board members are maybe interested in. I would suggest that we agendize it for a future meeting, and that way we can have a full discussion about options. Again, my apologies for interrupting.
Mr. Najo, is it all right to respond though to a constituent's letter?
If it was a constituent's letter to your office, it would be one thing, but because this came in as an N item, the board's option in this case is if the board is interested in it, it can agendize it for a future agenda item, or you know, we can talk about having our TRA contact this constituent and maybe getting some more information for the board for a future agenda item.
All right, well, thank you very much. It is an issue that is of very high level of importance. I would love to talk to my fellow board members as to whether we should bring this forward as an agenda item. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the check, because I kind of figured we were getting a little too far off the agenda here on that item, but I just wanted to raise it in terms of a concern. So we will take it up hopefully at a future meeting here. Any other comments? See no other comments or hands? Ms. Taylor, do we have anybody on the line that wishes to speak on the N item?
Let me check. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Okay, once again, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. 1, 0 to make a comment. And we have no one queuing up for comment.
Thank you. With that, if I can have Ms. Taylor, please call our next item.
Our next item is the board work group on organization of board work groups. Follow-up discussion and action on the board work groups charter to formalize the board work groups forums. Chairman Vasquez will introduce this item.
Ms. Taylor, you know what? I just realized too that I believe as Ms. Lumpson is back or has that information, budget information on training that she wanted to share with Member Cohen's question. I think she asked about that earlier in the meeting, and it sounds like they were able to come up with some information on that that is relevant. Why don't we have her respond to that, and then we'll continue with our next item. And I see Ms. Lumpson on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Vasquez. I would like to, we've had an opportunity to pull some numbers together, and really like to be able to take the opportunity to look at the budget detail for the training certification unit a little bit more time to do that. And so I'm asking that we can possibly come back and maybe I could report on that in my December report for training and certification and provide more accurate numbers. It just requires us to look at the numbers a little bit more detailed than for this meeting.
Sure, I think that's appropriate. And I don't see Member Cohen on the screen right now, but I'm sure she would be comfortable with that.
Yeah, we just like to give you some more accurate numbers. At this time, they would be real high level numbers. So if that's okay with you, I'd like to provide them at the December meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting back to us. With
you,
that, Ms. Taylor, you can continue.
Okay. Do you want me to recall the item, Chairman Vasquez?
Please, just so people know. Yes.
All right. Our next item is the board work group on organization of board work groups. Follow-up discussion and action on the board work groups charter to formalize the board work groups forums. Chairman Vasquez will introduce this item.
Thank you. We will now convene the board work group on the organization of board work groups. This is a follow-up discussion and action on the board work groups.
Sure.
And I'm getting ready to introduce you, Member Cohen. Just give me a second. And it's under the charter to formalize the board work group forums. And I'm going to turn to Member Cohen as the work group chair, and Member Cohen, I believe she is available and ready to go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just for clarification, last month, I made a full presentation on the proposed charter. And at this time, I guess I was just trying to check in to see if there are any questions after reviewing the charter. If not, I'd like to move for adoption on charter, but the charter as it was drafted, but we didn't have like a work group on charter. I can't hear you, Mr. Vasquez.
I'm sorry, Member Cohen, I just froze. I was actually taken out. I just got back on the screen, so I didn't get to hear your comments. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just to recount, Ms. Fleming made a presentation to us, and then I moved to adopt it. And so that is the action. It wasn't necessarily a formalized work group that was organized. Ms. Fleming, is my recollection accurate?
So yes, it is accurate. So at the prior discussion, we raised the issue of bringing structure to the work group, specifically looking at the charter. And so, and like you, Ms. Cohen, if my recollection of the detail is that we wanted to lay out the material. The discussion was that the board members at that time at the last meeting had not had an opportunity to really study the material. And so the action and discussion then at the last meeting was to bring it forward to this month with the expectation that members would review the material and be prepared to discuss it now. And in our pseudo, we haven't officially adopted all aspects of the work group structure yet. That's part of what this charter process is here to establish. But I think it is scheduled on the agenda at this point as a work group, albeit loosely. So it's just an opportunity at this point, members, for you as members to have some conversations around the charter. The material has been attached to PAN. And then if you've had a chance to review the material, to offer any comments, thoughts or recommendations, and as you deem appropriate. And if none, then I defer to Ms. Cohen on her motion to proceed. But fundamentally, the material that's been provided on PAN is the cover letter with some more information, and then the charter is attached to that material. So it's whether or not that is ready for your discussion or ready for your adoption.
With that, let me just make a couple of quick comments, Member Cohen, then I'll turn it back to you. You can either respond or we could move forward with your recommendations here. And basically, it's one, I support the charter, and especially as it's stated on pages 3 and 4, that the chair or member established in the work group has the power to specify, number 1, the work group subject matter and objectives. And then number 2, the work group chair or co-chairs. 3, the work group time frame, and that work group discussions and meetings will be open to the public. And then one question on page 4, while the work group chair and co-chair are responsible for its agenda, work plan, supporting materials, and participants, the board chair and the ED have the right to review for legal and technical purposes. And I just want to confirm that that doesn't mean that the board chair or the ED would have any kind of veto power or of whatever is presented. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, it's no different than what we do with our regular meetings. What you're asking. We're not departing from our already established practice.
All righty, thank you. Any other comments or questions from any of the members? If not, I'll turn it back over to you, Member Chair Cohen. Oh, I see a hand from Ms. Stowers. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. Thank you, Member Cohen. Thank you for additional time to review the draft charter. I'm in support of it, especially like the fact that the work group chair and vice chair of the work group will have the responsibility for developing the material and including in the minutes of the work group, and we perhaps won't have an oversight like we currently are dealing with for Thursday when it comes to the work group minutes. So again, thank you. Well thought out plan, and I'm prepared to vote on this one.
Thank you, Ms. Stowers. All right, Mr. Chair, it looks like we are ready to move forward and make a motion to adopt the charter as presented in the PAN.
Second.
Thank you. Second by Ms. Stowers.
Any comments or questions about the motion? Oh, it sounds like there's one. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say public comment.
Yes. No, I was seeing if there was any from the members. I will open it to the public first or after. See no other hands are up. Ms. Taylor, we don't have any written comments on this, do we?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we just check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
And if you'd like to make public comment, please press 1, then 0. 1, 0. And we have no one queuing up for comment.
Thank you. So with, oh, I see a hand now from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Member Cohen and all our effort on getting these work group policy back together, because it's something that the BOE has done historically, but we just got off track with AB 102, and then of course we had the pandemic. So I just want to highlight the fact that you brought this forward, and thank you for doing so. And I think it can be very productive in terms of bringing parties together on issues of concern that we ought to be addressing as members of the BOE. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I think we're ready for a vote. Ms. Taylor.
All right, the motion on the floor is to adopt the charter as presented in the PAN. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen. Was that an aye? Member Cohen?
You're muted, ma'am.
You were muted. Okay.
Thank you. Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. With that, members, I believe that pretty much takes care of all our business for today. And
Chairman Vasquez, this is Brenda Fleming, Executive Director. My apologies for the interruption. Just a comment. Congratulations to the members who've just added another significant piece of work to our portfolio of accomplishments. I would like to add, I would like the opportunity for my staff and I to work with Board Members Cohen's office to refine and then maybe come back with, if you want to look at some of the procedural, a little bit more detail on the procedures. This is the charter. So I just want to acknowledge that this is the charter that provides a broader framework. As you move forward and you start to execute it, you might find some things that you might want to tweak and refine. So I'm just making myself available as you're encountering some of those issues if you have questions, so that we could make sure that the body of work, especially as it relates to agendas, minutes, etc., and you've been doing a lot of it anyway, that those materials align with the board proceedings requirements in our Bagley meeting documents to make sure that there's accuracy. Member Collins, we just want to make sure that when you're ready to move with those kinds of activities, consistent with what we have discussed, that it just aligns, and that way we've just got good solid material all around. That's consistent, members, with the prior committee structure. Even though the structure has more flexibility, it just does add just another element of quality to our body of work. So just want to make myself available to assist with that as needed. Thank you, members.
thank you. And with that, I want to thank you as well as your staff for your dedication and hard work, especially for the business that we were able to take care of today and handle today. And we will not adjourn the meeting, but rather recess today's meeting, board meeting, and we'll reconvene this on Thursday, November 18th at 10 a.m. So with that, thank you all and have a good evening, and we'll see you all on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Take care.
Thank you, members. Thank you, staff.